Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Bella was happy to cling to Edward's back as he ran them to his house. The utter joy they shared at the news of the Volturi's departure was so great that after a very long cold kiss that could have led to something more if Edward hadn't pushed her away, they decided it was time to go home and tell Edward's family the news. Bella considered doing that age-old prank where you gather the family and tell them you have important news while rubbing the woman's stomach, making them believe she's pregnant before imparting the real news. But, considering Edward's little swimmers were frozen dead, she doubted his family would fall for such a trick. Plus, she didn't know if she could pull it off. She was never really good at jokes and pranks. As they approached the house, Edward slowed down and let her get off his back. Holding hands, they walked towards the house, only for Edward to tense as they got closer. "Felix is here," Edward muttered darkly as he glared at the house. "I thought he left." Bella frowned. "Does that mean your family will already know about Demetri and Harry leaving?" "I don't know. I'm trying to read their thoughts, but they are all thinking nonsensical things to stop me. Let's go inside." Belle didn't protest as Edward dragged her forward. She even ignored the few times she stumbled on the way back, because nothing bothered her as long as Edward was with her. Entering the house, the pair was stunned to see the living room completely changed. Gone were the designer furniture and tasteful decor. Instead, a gaudy podium, 4 chairs and writing desks, 3 padded seats side by side facing the setup, and a large television occupied the space. "What's going on?" Edward demanded as he looked around. With a large grin, Felix stepped into the room and opened his arms in a welcoming gesture. "Greetings," he cheered. "And welcome to the Are You the Perfect Vampire Couple game show, with me, your host, Felix Trebek." Bella felt a large amount of dread wash through her. Damn those Volturi! Felix had been bored. Very bored. In an attempt to overcome this obstacle, while Demetri and Harry got to play with their pet human Charlie, he had switched on the television and stumbled upon a show. The newlywed game had made him laugh at the silly human couples. It was hilarious to watch in his opinion, and at the exact moment, one poor husband got flustered when asked his wife's eyes color. Felix had an idea. A slightly elaborate and time-consuming plan started to form. He would have his own game show, he just needed to wait for the perfect moment to play it. Now here he was, waiting impatiently for Edward and his idiot human to get back so he could start. He had roped Rosalie and Emmett to play, set up the game area, and even designed a whole new format of the game, which would bring about maximum humiliation. When the pair did arrive, Felix could see their obvious confusion, and he stepped in to get the ball rolling. Cue audience applause, opening music, and lighting. "Greetings," he stated happily, "and welcome to the Are You the Perfect Vampire Couple game show with me, your host, Felix Trebek." Jasper, Carlisle, and Esmond stepped into the room next and cheered as an audience would. Felix grinned at them and waited for them to take their positions as designated audience members. Once they were set, Felix continued on. "Today we have 2 special couples with us, both hoping to win the grand prize. The first couple is a pair that is the envy of every human they cross, not only for their physical features, but for the obvious love they share with each other. Please give a big hand to our first couple, Emmett and Rosalie." The audience clapped and cheered again, and in a moment of playfulness, Jasper even catcalled. Rosalie glared at the empath while flipping her hair elegantly, while Emmett grinned at his brother. The duo took 2 seats on opposite sides of the room from the other and looked to him patiently. "Our second couple is one of a unique variety. One could even go as far to say that they are unconventional, but let's be honest, in our world, what isn't unconventional? Please welcome Edward and Bella." The audience clapped, but the pair stood in place, staring at him. Felix narrowed his eyes at them. "Take your seats," he sternly commanded them. He would not have the pair ruin his game. Edward glared defiantly at him. "What are you doing here? What is all this nonsense? Shouldn't you be on a plane back to Italy with the other 2 by now?" Edward asked. "You may need to clarify. I'm not sure I understand," Felix responded. He kept his thoughts blank. Bella told Demetri and Harry that Jacob was the one who told her about us being vampires. They said their job was done and were going home, so why are you still here when you should be somewhere over the ocean in a flying tin can? The audience gasped at the news and then knelt in anticipation. Oh, Felix understood now. Silly Edward, That's simple. I'm on vacation. I was never given the same mission as them, so therefore I do not need to go back with them. I can spend all the time I want here, and right now I want to continue with my game, so get to your seats before I punish you both. Edward sputtered, but Felix didn't care. Instead, he ran towards the pair and forced them to their seats. Once they were in place, Felix returned to his podium. Now that both our couples are seated, we can go over the rules of the game, Felix said to the audience. The rules are simple. There will be 3 rounds with 5 questions each round. You get 2 points for every correct answer, and -1 point for every wrong answer. When I ask a question, you will write your answer on the whiteboard provided and present it to the audience when I say so. You must answer truthfully, you must answer every question, and no talking to your partner, and you better not cheat. This is a fair game, Felix instructed. Rosalie and Emmett nodded, understanding the rules. He smiled at the pair as he saw the fierce look of determination settle in their eyes. They were a competitive couple. Okay, let's get started. You will find your whiteboard and markers in your writing desk. Felix waited for everyone to get out their supplies. Edward and Bella stubbornly refused to move, and Felix sighed at the pair. The game would be no fun if they didn't play along. Reaching under his podium, Felix took out a gun and aimed it at Bella. Now would be a good time to get your writing supplies and participate, he threatened. Edward roared as he stood up and raced in front of Bella to protect her from the threat. Did you really think I would let you kill Bella while I'm around? Edward asked as he snarled at Felix. You're a fucking idiot, Felix said as he pulled the trigger. He watched in satisfaction as the bullet went forward and hit Edward in the middle of the forehead, splashing pink paint over his face. If I killed her, how would I be able to carry on my game? Now, sit down or she will get painted. Felix on the top of the barrel for added effect. Edward growled as he tried wiping the paint off his face. His family laughing at him probably didn't help his mood, but Felix didn't care. How dare. Yeah, have your prissy temper tantrum another time. We have a game to play. You know, for such a young vampire, you are really a downer. I remember when I was your age, I spent days partying, drinking the blood of royals, and having heavy and rough sex with every female vampire I could lay my hands on. You're similar to an old man with erectile dysfunction, miserable all the time, and always trying to ruin others' fun as well. Now shut up, sit down, and play, or I will call Charlie and tell him exactly where his daughter is and return her covered in paint. Edward was exhausting in his opinion and was ruining the mood of his game. He worked hard on this, damn it. Edward growled some more, but finally sat down. Now that we are all ready, writing tools out, and we will start, Felix waited for everyone to get situated, and continued. The first round will be questions for the males. I will ask you a question about your partner, and you will write down your answer. The females will write the correct answer on their board. You will present your answer, and explain why you chose that. After each explanation, we will see what the correct answer is when the female reveals her board. Understood? Fuck. It was like talking to 3-year-olds. Maybe he should have made an information packet and had each couple study it the night before so he could avoid all this useless explaining. But then again, the game show hosts. He had studied all had to explain the rules every episode, so maybe he should suck it up. Nah, he would make an information packet next time. Round 1. For the menfolk. First question, what tool is your partner most handy with? A hammer, a drill, a tape measure, or a screwdriver? Felix watched as Emmett grinned and quickly scribbled down his answer, while Edward frowned. Felix took sick pleasure in knowing that Bella was the only mind Edward couldn't read. It was why he knew his game would work out, because now Edward couldn't cheat. When everyone was done writing, Bella taking a little longer than the others, Felix grinned at the audience. Let's see the answers, boys, if you would. Emmett drill. Edward hammer. Emmett, why don't you explain first? Felix prompted. Emmett shrugged his shoulders. It was easy, really. I mean, have you ever seen Rosalie change her tires? It's like watching a pit crew at work. Zoom, 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 zoom. And bam, tires changed, and she's ready to go. Edward's frowned. Got more pronounced. Bella doesn't need to fix anything, not while I'm around. But the hammer is the most universally used tool. Let's see the correct answers. Felix gestured towards the girls to show their boards. Rosalie turned her and revealed drill, while Bella's board showed I don't know. Felix grinned and took out his gun again and aimed it at Edward. In quick succession, he shot Edward and Bella, covering them both in pink paint. Emmett and Rosalie get 2 points, while Edward and Bella get -1. Oh, off to a bad start. The audience booed in pity for the pair, only making Edward's mood worse. Rose M +2. Total 2, Ed Bella, -1. Total, why did you shoot us? He demanded. I forgot to mention that for every incorrect answer, you will also get a punishment. Better think your answer through more next time. Maybe you could sell this game to a network. Someone would want to pick it up. Question 2. Next question, if you could make a romantic dinner for your wife, what would she like on the menu? Edward looked more confident this time around and wrote his answer quickly. Answers, please. Edward mushroom ravioli. Emmett dough. It was what she ordered when I took her to La Bella Italia. Edward explained. She will bite and scratch me if I catch a dough and don't give it to her. Girls? The audience groaned as Bella revealed. Cheeseburger. Felix mentally cheered as he shot the pair again. Emmett was correct, and they moved on. Rose M +2, total 4. Ed Bella -1, total -2. Felix looked at the scores. Edward and Bella just need one correct answer to get them back at 0. Let's hope this next question will be easier for the pair to connect. Question 3. If trapped on an island, what could she not live without? The audience oohed at that difficult question in appreciation. Felix trained them well. When the answers were revealed, Felix laughed. Emmett, mirror. Edward, me. Rose needs to look good, and the only way she can ensure that her palm leaf dress properly accentuates her figure is with a mirror. Bella loves me. I would protect and feed her if we were on an island. Ooh. The audience called after Edward's answer. That was a cop-out. The correct answers, please. Felix addressed the females. Rosalie, as expected, had written mirror, and Bella wrote Edward. Felix felt a little sick at their sappy love fest, and Edward and Bella returned to 0 points. Hopefully, from this point on, they will continue to gain points. Roseanne +2, total 6. Ed Bella +2, total 0. Question 4. What is the most she has ever spent on a pair of shoes? Bella looked uncomfortable at the question while Rosalie glared at Emmett, daring him to get it wrong. Emmett, 2,495. Edward, 50. Emmett sighed as he showed his answer. They were Jimmy Choo platform heels with Swarovski crystals. She's never worn them, just kinda stares at them now and then. Rosalie sniffed. Of course I wouldn't wear them. I'm saving them for the perfect occasion. Their debut needs to be spectacular. Moving on. Well, Bella wears Converse a lot, and those usually go for around $50, Edward answered. Correct answers, please. Felix watched the boards and smiled. Emmett was correct with an answer of $240.95, but Edward was wrong. Bella wrote $522. The audience groaned. But he was close. Should we give him the points? He did say around 50. Felix asked them. Yes. The audience called, all in agreement. Well, weren't they nice? Roseanne +2, total 8. Ed Bella +2, total 2. Question 5. What is your partner's favorite room in the house? Emmett, family room. Edward, her bedroom. Rose likes the family room best because that's where everyone gathers, and she's a big old family type of gal. Edward opened his mouth to answer, but Felix cut him off. I don't think we need to hear your reason. So scandalous, naughty, you two. Felix chided them. Bella promptly blushed at his words while Edward glared, but Felix kept his game going. Women, if you would, please. Boards turned, and both correct answers. Well, it seems that Edward and Bella were off to a bad start, but quickly found their footing. That brings an end to round 1. Please join us for round 2, after the commercial break. Roseanne +2, total 10. Ed Bella +2, total 4. Yeah! High five, babe! Emmett cheered as he darted out of his seat and over to his wife. Rosalie smacked his hand, and together the pair grinned menacingly at their opponents. Felix stretched and put down his cue cards. Taking out a glass of blood from his podium, he leaned against it and stared at the couples. This is fun, isn't it? He was quite enjoying himself with this. Not only did it endear him to the Cullen coven, but he got to embarrass the human. Oh, he knew they would eventually get some questions right, but he only planned for this to get worse. The further they played, Edward shot him a look. I can hear your thoughts, you know, and if you think for 1 second that I will allow you to And welcome back from commercial break. Felix cheered as he put his glass of blood away and exchanged the pink paint bullets in his gun to purple ones. The current score stands Rosalie and Emmett in first with 10 points, and Edward and Bella in last with only 4. Let's dive right into round 2. Round 2 for the Winch. Question 6. What color is his toothbrush? Bella stared blankly at her board before hesitantly picking up the marker and uncapping it. Felix watched as she put the marker to the board, stopped, raised the marker again, lowered it, chewed on the end, brought it to the board, and finally wrote down a word. If this was how it was going to go for every question, Felix felt like this game would go on forever. Never has 5 questions looked so tedious before. Rosalie, pink. Bella, blue. Edward went to move his marker, but Felix leveled the gun on him. Don't you dare try to cheat by changing your answer, he threatened. Show your board, Edward as is. Edward glared and slowly turned the board around to show that he listed several different colors. Felix fired off 3 quick shots, hitting Edward on the nose, chin and chest. No petty tricks. You both fail this question. For good measure, Felix shot Edward again before hitting Bella. Rose M +2, total 12. Ed Bella -1, total 3. Question 7. Felix glared at Edward to remind him to play right as he lightly tapped his cue cards on the podium. Next question. If your partner was lost, what would he do? E. Stop and ask for directions. B. Ask you for directions. C. Stop and buy a map. D. Pretend he wasn't lost and keep driving. Bella repeated her process of almost answering, thinking, possibly writing something, but then switching to chewing on something, and then finally putting the marker to the board. Felix sighed. He would need to speed this up a little. Answers. Rosalie B. Ask me for directions. Bella C. Buy a map. Boys, if you would. Emmett, ask Rose. Edward asked directions. Splat, splat. Felix grinned at the multicolored pair and moved on. Rose in +2, total 14. Ed, Bella, -1, total 2. Question 8 and 9. Let's throw 2 together, shall we? Question 8, where did he take you for your first official date? Question 9, when it comes to the upper body, would you say he is A, buffed, B, puffed, C, stuffed, or D, not enough? The audience all snorted when Bella turned her board over, and Felix could see why. Rose, Bison Reserve, buffed. Bella, a restaurant, buffed. Felix decided to ignore her for now and looked at Rosalie. Please explain. Emmett took me to a Bison Reserve because he thought it was the closest thing a vegetarian vampire could get to a delicacy. And I don't think anyone here would argue that Emmett is not buff. What can I say? I'm a romantic, Emmett quipped. Turning to Bella, Felix chuckled. Buffed? Dragging his eyes up and down. Edward's body, Felix shook his head. I think not enough applies appropriately here. Boards, boys. Emmett Bison Farm, buffed. Edward, here, buffed. Really? You think you're buff? Felix asked. He shot Edward again before he could retort, not wanting to hear the mind reader's protests. He couldn't do anything about the points, though. Both answered the same thing. Rose M +2, total 18. Ed Bella -1 +2. Total 3. Question 10. What would your partner say is your least favorite topic to talk about? B. Sports. B. Politics. C. Weather. D. Other people. Felix watched as Edward tried to silently tell Bella to write weather. He was mouthing the word and looking quite serious about it, but Bella merely stared back blankly before writing something down. Felix readied his gun. Rose, weather, Bella, other. Well, Edward seemed to fail, but to her credit, she was close. Emmett, weather. Edward, weather. Splat, splat. Rose M +2, total 20. Ed Bella -1, total 2. Round 3. All y'all. Question 11 to 15. Felix jumped right into the last round, hoping to wrap this up. Now inside your desks, you will find a piece of paper with 5 questions on it. You will fill them out, hand them to me, and then I will ask them out loud, and you have to write down your partner's answer. This is a chance for you to double your points. Now please, fill out your quizzes. Once everyone handed in their quizzes, Felix started. First question was, what is your dream job? What do you think your partner wrote? Emmett, professional race car driver. Rosalie, Godzilla. Edward, Harlequin writer. Bella, pianist. Felix tested. Emmett and Rosalie were both correct. 2 points each. Unfortunately, Edward and Bella are wrong. Bella wrote housewife, and Edward wrote composer. Negative a point each. Felix changed his paintballs over to black paint and shot Bella and Edward twice. Rosamund, +2, total 24. Ed Bella, -1, total 0. What is your partner's most irritating habit? I like this one. So what do you think your partner said about you? Emmett joked too much. Rosalie hates everyone too quickly. Edward too good looking. Bella none. Felix shook his head at the human-vampire pair. They were ridiculous. Once again, Rosalie and Emmett get 2 points each, and Edward and Bella fail the question. Edward thought Bella's most irritating habit was having to go home, and Bella thought Edward's most irritating habit didn't exist. Pulled out a shotgun-style paintball gun and loaded it with blue and black paint to shoot the couple. Rosem +2+2, total 28. Ed Bella -1, total -2. Who's the safer driver? Emmett, me. Rosalie, him. Edward, her. Bella, him. Felix checked the papers. Emmett said he was the safer driver, so Rosalie is correct. Rosalie thought Emmett was the safer driver, so Emmett is correct as well. That's 2 points each. Bella thought Edward was the safer driver, so that's -1 point. Edward thought Bella was the safer driver, so that's another point gone. Your two sickeningly sweet love fest isn't faring you well. Roseman +2+2, total 32. Ed Bella -1, total -4. If you could have any superpower, what would it be? Oh, there are some interesting answers here, so what do you think they wrote? Emmett, the Force. Rosalie, Godzilla Beast Mode. Edward, Vampirism. Bella, to read my mind. Well, Rosalie wrote that she wants to be able to use the Force so she can force choke all the ingrates. 2 points for Emmett, and let's hope that never happens. Emmett wrote that he wanted to be able to transform into Godzilla like Bruce Banner can change into the Hulk. 2 points there. Edward wrote he wanted X-ray vision. Felix sent the mind reader a sly look. Oh, and what would you see through? Bella's clothes? So naughty. This is a family game. And finally, Bella wrote that she wished for the power to be invisible. Is that to keep Edward from seeing your dirty knickers? Bella blushed. Edward growled. And Felix moved on. Rose M, +2+2. Total 36. Ed Bella, -1, total -6. Last question. Felix started. Imagine you are a vampire, and your chosen mate was human. The only reason you are attracted to them is because they are your singer, and you can't read their mind. Knowing that you have 100 years apart in terms of age, and most people would call you a pedophile. That's enough. That last question is completely Edward raged before getting cut off with a paintball to the mouth. He spluttered and spat the paint out as Felix closed the game down. Well, folks, looking at the current tallies, I don't think we even need to answer the last question. With an overwhelming victory, Rosalie and Emmett win. The 3 audience members cheered as Rosalie and Emmett took bows and hugged each other. They win an all-expenses-paid trip to Italy. Edward stomped over to Bella and took her hand. Come, Bella. I will get you some clothes so you can shower and change. He reassured her. Felix stepped in before they could leave, though. I regret to inform you too, but the punishment for losing, with a rather impressive score at that, is that you will have to walk around the rest of the day as you are. Edward huffed and turned towards him, gesturing to his clothes. We're covered in paint. We look like walking bruises with these colors, he hissed furiously. Well, that works out nicely since most people consider you two walking eyesores anyways. If you didn't want to suffer the consequences, then you shouldn't have agreed to play the game. Felix argued. But we didn't! You forced us to play the game! Edward yelled. Oh, hush now. No one can force you to do anything if you don't want to. Now accept your punishment and congratulate your brother and sister. They're gonna Italy, you know. Edward glared, stomped his foot, and let out an aggressive sigh as he looked around the room. Before he could argue further, though, Felix grabbed his and Bella's arms and stopped them from moving. Now just wait here patiently because I believe we will have a very important guest soon. The Cullens all looked at him questioningly, but Felix ignored them as he looked towards their driveway, where a car was starting to drive down. The police cruiser was very recognizable, but what shocked his paint-covered pair was the little bouncing ball of undead in the front seat, gesturing wildly as he told the police chief a story. Harry? Bella gaped. But I thought he was going back to Italy, she yelled. Felix laughed. You really think Harry and Demetri would leave that easily? They have 2 very well-established aliases here. They couldn't leave without Charlie worrying and filing missing persons reports. No, they merely waited for you and Edward to run off, while I distracted you with this game, so that they could inform Charlie that you fled to the Cullens' house again. Let's see how Charlie's punishes you next, Felix cheered. Just then, Charlie got out of his car and looked through the window to give Bella a very disappointed look. Awkwardness and small undertone of simmering anger filled the Cullens' living room. When Charlie arrived, Bella barely had time to blink before Felix had cleared away the television and other game show paraphernalia. As Charlie reached the door, Felix was opening it and welcoming the man, while the rest of the Cullens settled the living room in super speed. By the time Charlie sat down on the couch, the room resembled its former glory, minus the dumbstruck Bella in the middle. "Sorry to intrude like this, Doctor," Charlie apologized, his gaze never leaving Bella. "It's quite all right, Charlie. I knew you would be by soon," Carlisle answered. He knew realistically that when Felix showed up in their home with some grand scheme, that it would not end well for his eldest son and his girlfriend. When Felix kicked Alice out of the house and cryptically told her that she still had a mission to complete, that it really wasn't going to end well. But then Felix pitched his game idea, including a very excited Rosalie and Emmett, and Carlisle didn't have the heart to object. Things between him and his two children had been strained since Rosalie's outburst about his preferable treatment of Edward. He wanted to fix that, and if this game would help mend the fence, he was going to participate. He did, and loved it. It was fun to see the answers, to watch people get hit with paintballs, and more importantly, see his children playing together. "We seem to be meeting a lot like this, and I don't know if it's because of my daughter, or your son, or something else, but these children just don't know how to follow rules and stay away from each other," Charlie stated bluntly. "I'll tell you right now that I won't stand for this anymore. Bella, if you step one more toe out of line, I will have you shipped right to military school." Military school. Bella finally came back to herself. "Well, it's better than sending you back to your mother's. At least there you might learn to respect the rules set down and show what you can do and accomplish on your own without the need for a boyfriend. You're a smart girl, Bella, which is why I don't understand your need to be so dependent on Edward. I don't know who you are, Bella. All I see in my mind is the sweet little girl I raised," and then it jumps to this. Charlie gestured towards his daughter. "Who is this person that's living in my home? All I know about you is that you're dating Edward. You love Edward. You want to be with Edward. I know more about Edward than I do you. I rather know that I put a young woman in the United States Military Academy, where she will learn drill, dress, and deportment, than to continue sharing my home with a weak and ignorant girl with no ambition." Charlie stood up quickly and marched towards the door. "You know what? I'll give you a choice. You can come with me now and promise to obey my rules while accepting your punishment gracefully, or you can stay here. Stay here as long as you like. But if you step one single foot into my house, you will be off to military school. I don't care about late admissions or extra fees, because I will find a way to send you right then and there. So make your choice." Carlisle watched the entire scene in surprise. He knew Charlie was getting fed up with Bella's constant disregard to his rules, but he didn't think he would go this far. But maybe it would be for the best. He knew without a doubt that Bella would choose to stay here, which would break Charlie's heart. But if Bella were ever to become a vampire, she needed to sever that connection anyway. Charlie opened the door and looked back, his eyes stern and focused. What will it be? Bella bit her lip and shuffled foot to foot, looking as if she were contemplating the decision, which only hardened Charlie's face. "I know that hesitance isn't about whether to come home or not. It's about how you will tell me you are staying. I know I leave a lot to be desired in the father department, but I didn't think I was so bad that you wouldn't even show a shred of sadness over our situation. Goodbye, Isabella." The Volturi were cruel, murdering creatures that thrived in despair and bloodshed. Carlisle knew this to be a fact, but the moment Charlie walked out that door and Harry rushed to the officer and offered him a sincere hug of comfort, Carlisle couldn't help but think that they weren't so bad. He could only watch as a heartbroken father was led to the back of his own car and helped inside while a Volturi guard sat next to him in comfort. He watched as Demetri stopped scheming and gloating for a moment to give the man a pat on the shoulder and then climbed behind the wheel to take the broken man home. Those two, whose only goal had been to mercilessly torture a human girl, were doing more for Charlie than the Cullens ever could, and that was like a punch to the gut. The Cullens always acted and talked about how they were better than the Volturi morally and culturally. They told themselves that by feeding on animals they were better than those monsters hidden under Italy that feasted on tourists. But were they really? They had torn a young girl away from her lonely father and didn't even care. They ripped the Swan family apart for their selfish desires, and not quickly like the Volturi did when they simply killed people. No. They dragged it out over months, watching as Charlie was hurt more and more, and yet they encouraged Bella. Were they really better than the Volturi in any way? Looking at his family, Carlisle couldn't help, as another truth sunk in. Maybe it wasn't his family that was in the wrong, but simply him. Edward and Bella, Rosalie, Emmett, and Jasper were all standing in various spots, glaring at the couple in question, all looking disapproving to their actions. Esme, his dear sweetheart, was off to the side, looking confused and worried. He was the head of this family, and he hadn't stopped Bella from sneaking off to see Edward. He didn't stop Edward from going over to Bella's every night. He didn't discourage them when Charlie talked to him last. He hadn't done anything except give Bella hope that one day she would be a vampire. And wasn't that the main issue here? Bella wanted to be a vampire, and when Carlisle allowed his family to discuss it democratically, he unknowingly told Bella that it was possible. What human on this earth would think that school and friends and even their families were more important than becoming a vampire? Every human was born with curiosity. It was what the Volturi preyed on. The tourist wanted to experience something new, something they couldn't see in their original hometowns. So when a pretty woman or handsome man steers them towards Italy's catacombs, they are intrigued. Their curiosity perks its head up and tells them to explore the catacombs, to learn its secrets. Once they pay the tour fee, they are signing their death certificate, and that's what Carlisle did to Bella and Charlie. The moment he allowed Bella to sit in on the meeting about her mortality, he signed the death certificate on her father-daughter relationship. I think we need to have a family meeting about this. Can someone call Alice? Carlisle asked as he rubbed his eyes. He needed to set things right to redeem himself in some way. Because as it stood, he didn't feel like he had any right to lead this coven if he was so blinded to the world around him. First with Rosalie, then Edward and Bella. Now innocents were getting hurt. The meeting about what? Bella moving in with us? I don't think anyone would object, right? Edward looked around the room, waiting for his family to support his statement, but no support was coming. Edward, I think we need to have a family meeting about this. Carlisle was firm on this. They would talk as a family. And if no solution was found, he would make the decision and lay down the law. I'm sorry, Bella, but would you mind leaving us for a while? You can go walk in the forest, or go into town to get something to eat. This is a discussion just for the family. Bella spluttered while Edward was quick to argue that Bella was just as part of the family as any of them were, but Carlisle wasn't going to argue about this. No, he stated firmly and looked Edward straight in the eye. I said it was just for the family, and Bella needs to leave. She can borrow your car to go get food, and then when we are all done talking, you can call her and ask her to come back. You know, Felix integrated himself into the conversation, bringing awareness back to his presence. Bella left quite the mess back at the reserve. I bet there's a certain little wolf that would just love to have a long and meaningful conversation with her about knife wounds in the back. Bella, when you plunged that sharpened piece of metal into your friend's back, was it to the left of right, or did you aim for the center so you didn't seem biased to either side? But knowing you probably kept away from his heart so you could drag it all out instead of ending it with one fell swoop, right? I mean, if Eddie Boys leaves again, you will need your pet wolf there to comfort you. Carlisle sent the guard a glare. He didn't appreciate his input. Felix, if you wouldn't mind... Felix grinned as he cut Carlisle off. Oh, I don't mind at all. I think I will go and buy a couple pounds of honey garlic wings, some boxes of greasy fries, and a 24 of beer. That should help Charlie tonight as he sits at home thinking about his daughter that abandoned him, listening as a new piece of his human heart breaks off every minute that Bella doesn't go rushing back inside with an apology. Should be more fun than this place. Felix, Carlisle ground out. Just go, please. Felix gave one last cocky little grin and wave before he was out the door and gone from their sight. Seeing him leave, though, only put more pressure on Carlisle's shoulders, as the fact that their choices tonight could mean that Bella was turned or she died. If the Volturi learned that they didn't plan to turn her, they would kill her for knowing their secret. But if they did, would Carlisle's family ever be right again? Her mere presence split them down the middle. Would her inclusion do worse? Someone call Alice, and Bella, please leave. You can stay here tonight, but tomorrow and the day after. Carlisle, Edward protested. Edward, be quiet. I have tolerated your behavior long enough. It stops here. Do you even know what your actions have done? You brought a human into our home. You made us move away when you got scared. You went to the Volturi to die and brought their eyes down on this whole family. You brought them here to Forks, interfering with our lives, and you have ripped a family apart because of your selfishness. I'm sorry, Edward, but from this point forward, all major decisions will be discussed as a family. I'll call Alice, Jasper offered before he left the room to make the call elsewhere. We'll go set the table or something, Emmett said. Grabbing Rosalie's hand, he started to pull her into the other room. What are we gonna set? Rosalie whispered harshly. I don't know, I just wanted to leave the room. I couldn't keep staring at Edward and Bella without laughing at them. Emmett, this is a serious moment. Then maybe they should change. Carlisle sighed and tuned the two out. He would talk to them later. Looking at his eldest and his human girlfriend, Carlisle let out another sigh. Maybe you two should change first? Jacob was having a terrible day.
It started out well enough. He woke up and ate a big hearty breakfast with his dad. He worked in his garage for a few hours, had lunch with the pack, and then Bella called and said she was coming. That made him happier than anything else because he missed Bella. Just seeing her face made everything seem lighter.
But then things went downhill. Bella had brought 2 leeches with her, and not just any 2, no, she brought the 2 that had given the pack diarrhea. At least with the Cullens, they never provoked the pact, preferring to live in their part of town. But the 2 new ones weren't following the treaty, and stepped on the reserve for a second time. Sam and the others had been around, ready to attack once Charlie was gone. They wouldn't dare expose their secrets to the police officer. Jacob thought that would be the worst of it, but he was wrong. The big leech dared to make fun of them, and then the little one mocked them by removing his shirt. But the worst part was that Bella had told the vampires in his pack that he had been the one to tell her about the Cullens being vampires. Now he was stuck in Sam's kitchen, while his alpha stood in front of him, furious. Why? Just tell me why first, Sam demanded. Jacob looked away and stayed silent. He knew he was in the wrong, but he stood by his choice. He never told her outright, merely pointed her in the right direction and gave her a large push. He stood by it, though, but he knew that no matter what he said, the answer wouldn't appease Sam. What was going through your mind? How could you betray the pack like this? Sam asked harshly. Jacob's eyes narrowed at the accusation. I never betrayed the pack, he argued. I did what I thought was right. Bella deserved to know what she was getting involved with. If she did or not doesn't matter. The point is that you did betray us, Sam yelled. We are descended from spirit warriors born to protect our land and people. We created the treaty with the Cullens to ensure a more peaceful life for those on this reserve, and you deliberately went against it. You know the treaty states we cannot tell any non-native about the Cullens being vampires. You know this, and you still told that girl. Is she native? Is she your wife? No, she's none of that. She has no connection to our reserve and has no reason to know. You betrayed us when you told her and broke part of the treaty. Do you know what this means? If the Cullens so chose, they can come on out reserve, they can feast on humans, they can kill without worrying about us. Because you broke the treaty, you, Jacob Black, knowingly informed Bella Swan and broke the treaty your ancestor, Ephraim Black, created. Jacob grit his teeth. Our job is to protect, and that is what I was doing. I was protecting Bella. No, you were fulfilling your own selfish desires. We all know that you love Bella, that you wish you could imprint on her, but it won't happen. Not once have the Cullens told the whites, we can shift. Not once have they spilled human blood. They kept their end of the treaty, and yet you shamed us by breaking our end. What did you expect me to do? She was hanging around a bloodsucker. Control yourself. I expect you to control yourself. Sam roared. Jacob shot the alpha a glare. Like, you're one to talk about control. Sam's face fell immediately, all fight leaving his body. Jacob continued to glare at the bigger wolf, knowing his words cut the man deep. The sound of light, footsteps walking away from the kitchen, alerted Jacob to the fact that his conversation hadn't been as private as he first thought, and guilt finally started to settle in. He had only meant to hurt Sam, but if his guess was right, Emily had heard his words too. I think we're done here, Sam whispered. I am going to your father to tell him about happened. Then I will call a meeting with Carlisle, Cullen, and apologize for your foolishness, and see if I can smooth things over, and keep the treaty intact. It may seem like a small thing to you, telling Bella, but a treaty is a treaty, and even breaking a small part of it is a serious offense. Jacob watched as Sam walked out of the kitchen, stopping briefly to whisper to Emily in another room. The older man had worked hard for the pact and the reserve, doing everything he could to protect it, even when it was him alone. Was Jacob in the wrong? Was Sam right? It didn't feel wrong telling Bella, but Sam accused him of betraying the reserve. He never understood the importance of the reserve. It was just a shitty piece of land that his people were forced to live on when the white people took over and didn't want to see them anymore. A lot of people left the reserve when they could, not wanting to live in such poverty. Before he shifted, Jacob always felt like he was trapped on La Push, trapped by the tales his father told him about his ancestors, Kahalaha, Taha, Aki, and Kwari, 3 chiefs that put their tribe and people first, defending what was theirs. His father always told him that the land belonged to no man. The land was the Creator's, and the Creator was letting us live on it. His ancestors fought for a place to live, but not to own. Jacob never cared to listen, only thinking the stories as an old man's ramblings. He never believed the stories about man shifting into wolves, but then he learned of the vampires and saw one for the first time, and he wondered, maybe the tales were true, but he still never connected to the land. It was still dirt and stone to him. Then Bella came, and he couldn't stand for the girl he used to call a friend, but now loved to be near such filthy creatures such as vampires. Him telling her about vampires was breaking the treaty, but what did it matter? There were no wolves to protect them anyways. Then he shifted, yet all he wanted was to kill the Cullens. He wanted them gone so that Bella would stop focusing on Edward and look at him. Then all this happened, and yet Jacob still couldn't bring himself to care or see things from Sam's point of view. In Sam's eyes, and probably the rest of the pack's, Jacob did wrong. But he still believed he did the right thing by telling Bella. It's just that Bella didn't fully understand the implications of getting involved with vampires. He couldn't even be mad at her for telling on him because the only reason she betrayed him was to protect herself. And Jacob stood by that. He betrayed his pack to protect her. And she was just doing what he would have done. Protecting Bella was the most important thing, and his pack just didn't see that. In fact, they betrayed him in a way. A pack was supposed to support a fellow wolf, yet none of them supported his love for Bella. Just because he hadn't imprinted on her yet, didn't mean that they should just ignore the girl he was in love with. Feeling righteous fury over his pack's betrayal, Jacob stood up and walked out of Sam's house. Let Sam fix the treaty and talk to the village elders. Jacob Black was going to continue his pursuit of Bella Swan. Demetri chuckled as he dropped a blanket over a passed-out Charlie. The living room was a mess. Harry and Demetri had arrived home bearing buckets of fried chicken, some cases of beer, and sacks of nachos and dip. Charlie had grumped to himself for a while, but then Billy Black showed up. The man was right, furious with his son, and had requested for one of the res boys to give him a lift to the policeman's house. Together, they were a pair of grumpy old men, both disparaging over their difficulties with their children. Jacob had apparently insulted the whole tribe and didn't show any remorse. Billy felt guilty and ashamed about his son. He had tried to raise him right, bring him up with their culture and tales, but his son had gone a different route. Charlie went on and on about how this had to be Renee's fault. If Bella had grown up with him, she would have learned to value herself and be independent. With Renee and her man-hoping ways, all Bella learned was to depend on a man. Then he went on to say that if Bella never had a daughter, she would probably learn the same lessons. Then together, they both complained about the Cullens. Sure, some were fine. After all, neither had a thing against the good doctor, but Edward, Rosalie, and the Hyper One all grated on their nerves. The boy was a menace. He crept outside young girls' windows. He was controlling and had no respect for authority. The blonde one was always looking down on everyone. The small Hyper One was just too much to be around. She bounced from place to place and always had this knowing smirk on her face, like she knew a secret. When they finally ran themselves dry with complaints, both men had fallen asleep on the couch. They sure had a lot to complain about, Harry commented as he put a blanket over Billy. You do that as you age. Caius is the same way. Just walks around, muttering to himself. He thinks we can't hear when he complains about us, but we do. Harry nodded his head before tilting it and thought, maybe he wants you to hear. He suggested. Demetri grinned. Probably. They busied themselves cleaning up the mess the two men made when Harry started feeling a smirk work its way on his face. Demetri snatched his little partner out of the air and carried him upstairs. What's on your mind, Harry? He asked. Harry giggled and used both his hands to cover his mouth. I was thinking of helping both men down there. They obviously need to punish their children. He trailed off. And how would you propose we do that? Harry giggled again and then leaned forward to whisper into Demetri's ear. The older vampire laughed out loud at the suggestion. I think that will be perfect. The Forks Women's Association met every Saturday evening at the local church. They like to organize small events for the town. trying to keep things a little exciting. It was also nice for them to just get out and enjoy themselves with some friends, leaving their husbands at home. Tonight, they had a small misfortune. The lovely glass container they used to hold their punch had been pushed over by a sudden gust of wind in the church, smashing it to pieces. They had all loved that container. It was a beautiful piece of glasswork. Not to be let down, they had pulled together all the change in their handbags and decided to send out a few of the more energetic women to fetch some refreshments from the nearby pharmacy. 3 of them set out and entered the store, intent on their mission, when they got sidetracked by a small boy standing by the condoms. "Oh my, what is that young one doing?" Abigail asked. The other 2 turned at her exclamation and both gasped at the sight. "Well, I never," Susan let out. "Where are his guardians?" Charlotte asked while looking around the store for another adult. Abigail decided that it was best to steer the boy away from such an inappropriate aisle. "Excuse me, sweetie, where are your parents?" she asked as she approached. The boy turned towards, showing her messy black hair, bright eyes, and an adorable face. He frowned slightly, and his bottom lip jutted out slightly. "My mommy died. I live with my Uncle Charlie now," he told her. "You poor dear," she sympathized. "Where is your uncle?" "Uncle Charlie was very tired, so he's sleeping on the couch. I was going to play games with Demi, but then my cousin's boyfriend called and asked me to do him a favor." He trailed off. Abigail had a moment of enlightenment. This little boy was the newest addition to Chief Swan's house. The women were all in a tizzy at the news. Mrs. Cole from down the street had told them about the new residents, and they had talked long and hard about whether they should welcome the boys with some nice homemade cakes. They decided that they would send 2 as representatives from the FWA, but every time the women approached the house, something was going on to deter them. "Are you talking about Bella's beau, Edward?" She would admit she was a bit nosy. There were rumors about the 2. The boy happily nodded. "Yeah, Edward called and said he needed a big favor." The boy's voice dropped. "But he said it needed to be a secret, and I couldn't tell anyone." Abigail held a gasp in. Looking around, it wasn't hard to gather what the secret was. Those 2 young things were sexually active, or were about to be, but how could that Cullen boy be so crash as to send a little boy to make his purchases? If he was going to have sex, then he needed to man up properly and buy the protection himself. If he couldn't do that, then he needed to keep his willy to himself. "I think that was very mean of Edward to send you out like this to run his errands. We'll take you home, sweetie, and you can tell Edward to purchase such items himself," Abigail told the boy. The boy's face fell, but Edward said that he couldn't get them since then. Him and Jacob would be found out, he explained earnestly. Abigail couldn't believe what she was hearing. It couldn't be, "Where's Bella, dear?" The boy scrunched up his nose and thought, "I think she went to Seattle with Alice tonight." Abigail stood up straight in anticipation. This was the juiciest bit of gossip to hit Forks in a long time. It was time to get this boy home so she could return to the church. She was saved, however, when a frazzled-looking young man ran into the pharmacy and straight to them. "Harry, I was so worried when you left the house with only a note. What prompted you to come to the pharmacy?" he asked. Harry, the boy, ran to the man's arms and hugged him. "Edward told me to go get him condoms, but not to tell anyone," he explained. "Well, Edward can go screw a cow for all I care, but you will not run any more errands for that vile boy," the man declared. Abigail watched the scene, and seeing that it was wrapping up, she slipped away and rejoined the other 2. "Let's hurry, ladies! You will never guess what I just learned." When the group returned to the church, Abigail was quick to tell all the other ladies that she learned that Edward Cullen was cheating on Chief Swan's daughter with another boy, no less. It wasn't hard to figure out from there that the Jacob Harry spoke of was Billy Black's son. Mrs. Cole then spoke up, saying that she did see Charlie looking overly morose earlier that day, and then noted that Billy had come over looking upset as well. Maybe they both found out about the affair. More theories were brought up, and when the meeting was over, all the women went home and quickly spread the news to their families and other friends. By morning, the news that Edward Cullen and Jacob Black were in a gay love affair was all over town. It was a long family meeting, not the longest, but still lengthy. They had spent the entire night, the morning, and well into the afternoon discussing everything. Finally, when Carlisle announced the final verdict, every Cullen was ready to just get out of their house. Alice had been anxious during the night. She told them that a vision was just on the edge of her mind, but it kept escaping. She couldn't tell if it meant anything good would happen. Edward very bluntly pointed that it probably related to the Volturi and their brat of a vampire, which meant nothing good was to come. Rosalie had laughed and calmly replied that while nothing good happened to Edward, her and Emmett had been having a grand old time with the little vampire. A fight ensued, and it only ended when Carlisle punched the dining table, splintering the poor furniture piece down the middle. They took a break after that to clear the ruined table, and Edward took the time to call Bella and told her that they were still talking. His girlfriend had been a little short with him. She had been driving around Forks aimlessly in his car, bored out of her mind and tired. Scared that she would get into an accident since her fatigued state wouldn't help her response time any, Edward suggested she use the extra cash he kept stored in his car to go and rent a motel room. Bella sighed and whined but complied in the end. After that, they reconvened, only to be surprised. Personally, I think you should just kill her, a voice spoke from the shadows. As one, the Cullen clan turned and snarled at the corner. Felix smirked as he walked out and gave a little wave. Hello, lovelies. What are you doing here, Felix? Carlisle snarled at the vampire. Oh, just dropping in to see how you're doing. It's an exquisite night out tonight. I heard that the charming ladies down at the Women's Association were in a right tizzy tonight. I even heard a special event is happening tomorrow. Carlisle sighed and massaged his forehead. Felix, we are in a family meeting. Please leave. Go, Edward growled at the guard. Your opinion is not wanted or needed here. Felix gave him a smirk and walked further into the room. I was just offering some friendly advice. It would be better to just kill her and be done with it. Is she really worth it? If you change her, you would be splitting up over this human girl. But if you kill her... Edward growled again and was getting ready to lunge at the interloper. Edward, stand down, Carlisle snapped. Felix held up his hands to ward off the vampire's next statement. I'll be frank with you all. I'm giving you this one piece of advice in good faith. Harry likes two of you, so it's the least I can do. Kill the girl, and you will be better off for it. You lie. You just want us to kill Bella so that we don't grow bigger than the Volturi and take down your twisted empire. Edward yelled. Felix sneered at him. Listen, you ignorant child. We don't fear you. We tolerate your existence and allow you all to live simply because we need to focus our energy on more important things. You think you're so important? You think we live each and every down twiddling our thumbs and wondering if you will attack us? We don't. You think a Rose sent us here because that bitch is turning is actually important? It's not. We just finished stamping out a rebellion in China, exhausting our forces and straining our resources. It took 2 years for us to capture and kill every last rebel. Demetri and Harry were the team leaders. They spent months out of contact, unable to feed, because if they took one human life, it could aggravate the situation worse and expose our existence to the world. As the Earth ages, the humans' technology expands. One wrong step, and vampires could be revealed. The humans would shudder in fear and find ways to wipe us out. That is what we do. We keep you and every other vampire on this earth safe from the humans. Our efforts ensure that you can continue feeding off animals, interacting with humans, and move when you want to. We are here simply because Demetri and Harry needed a vacation to unwind and relax so that the next time a vampire thinks they can overthrow us or create a newborn army, we will be in perfect condition to fight them. Could you do what we do? No. And we know it, which is why we don't fear you. You are all nothing but cowards running away from your true nature and feeding on animals. You had problems with one vampire, Victoria. There are 7 of you, and you couldn't handle her. You couldn't stop her stalking your precious human. You couldn't stop her from creating a newborn army. You couldn't do it. You needed us to solve your problem. If you couldn't handle one whiny bitch, how could you ever handle taking over Volterra? If you killed us, that is what you would have to do. Because if you didn't, then by killing us, you would have killed every other vampire out there. Because there would be no one to govern them. You think we're monsters, but you know nothing. So don't sit there calling me a liar, thinking I actually care whether you turn your pathetic human pet. The Cullens sat there stunned, utterly shocked from the guard's words. But if you really didn't care, then why does Arrow want Allison Edwards so badly? Esme asked, being the first to find the strength. Simple. Having someone who can see the future would aid us in discovering rebellions before they start. It would cut our workload down significantly. Having a mind reader with us during missions would make it easy to pluck the whereabouts of rogue vampires out of the captive's head, instead of bringing them back to Arrow for him to read them. They would make our work easier. But they aren't necessary. We have managed this long without such gifts, and will manage in the future, Felix explained. If you don't care about us, then why do you hate us? Edward asked. His bravery was remarkably resilient. Because your loose lips cause problems. All of you go around telling other vampires that the Volturi are evil, that we know nothing but bloodlust and how to exert our false sense of superiority. Did you think that those you told would just keep such words to themselves? No. They go around and spread it, igniting fury in other vampires that crave violence. It takes but one vampire to hear your self-righteous speech and decide that they don't want to live under such oppression. So they plot and scheme and they gather other weak-minded fools to them and start a rebellion. They believe they will be the revolution, ridding the word of the malicious Volturi, and instead instilling fair government. Or there are the ones that hear your words, saying things like, "We fear you," or "your size." Then get power-hungry and they band together, thinking that if they gather a dozen vampires, they can take us in, and then the world of vampires will bend under their thumb. We hate you because you speak without thinking, and we have to stamp out the fires you create. The room was silent. Not so talkative now, are we? Felix jeered. Well, glad we had this talk, but I have places to be. The Volturi member reached down and picked up a duffel bag at his feet. Without a goodbye, he was gone, leaving the Cullens in a mass of turmoil. The silence was only broken when, after a minute, Emmett came out of his stupor and frowned. Wait, was that my bag he had? That set the family off, and suddenly they had more things to discuss besides Bella. They needed to think about who they talked to about the Volturi, whether they needed to reconsider their opinion of the organization. Carlisle had sat down and took a long time to think over his time with them and had to look past his distaste of human blood before seeing a light. Mournfully, he had told his family about the times that the Volturi had indeed done good, and then suddenly all his memories were being looked at objectively. Edward got frustrated with his family for concentrating on Carlisle's memories and snapped. He told them they could look back and reflect any time, but currently Bella was holed in some rat-infested motel, and they needed to all agree that they would turn her so she could rightfully join the family. Rosalie protested. Emmett agreed with her. And Jasper had shaken his head and told everyone that he wasn't sure that was the best course of action. Alice had bounced in excitement and supported Edward, while Esme had frowned and looked sadly at all her children. Some more arguing followed, and at one point Jasper had retrieved a marker and used the blank dining room wall as a whiteboard to write down all the pros and cons of having Bella in the family. Insultingly, the pro column had less points than the con column, and Edward firmly blamed that on Rosalie. The blonde had gotten into a groove and listed fault after fault until Emmett had finally shut his wife up with a poorly timed joke. Edward was less than impressed. Now finally, after all that time and a near 24 hours since he sent Bella away, Edward was free to see his wonderful and beautiful mate. Carlisle decided that family vacation was in order, and Bella would join them to see if she could persuade the family into accepting her completely so they could change her smoothly. If she couldn't, they would decide that later. Taking out his phone, Edward dialed a well-memorized number. "Bella," he whispered as soon as the call connected. "Edward, are you finally done? Can I return to your house?" Bella asked. "Yes, but before that, I feel like I should treat you. You have been left alone for so long because we couldn't stop talking. I want to see you and have you all to myself for a while before I bring you back here." Bella giggled over the line, and the sweet melodious sound brought a smile to his face. "I'll be there soon," he promised. Hanging up, Edward made sure to change his shirt and put on some cologne that Bella liked. Leaping out his window, he left to retrieve his one true love. But it wasn't to be. As Edward dashed through the town, a few stray thoughts caught his opinion. They were about Bella, and they were mixed with sympathy and scandal. Hiding, Edward leaned against a building and listened as a group of women walked by. "It's completely true. I went by the motel this morning, and sure enough, there was his car. Right next to it was that native boy's little fixer-upper. An affair, I can hardly believe it. I wonder how the Cullen family will react. They really seem to like the Swan girl, but after this..." "Condoms," she said. He was standing there in the drugstore and he told her he was buying condoms for Bella's boyfriend. Sending a child to do that is downright disrespectful. Teenagers these days don't know how to keep it in their pants. If they can't get it from one bed, they are ready to jump to the next. Edward was shocked. How could this be? Bella was cheating on him with Jacob. No, that couldn't be right. There had to be a logical explanation for why Bella and Jacob were staying at the same motel. at the same time. There had to be a reason why these women thought Bella's boyfriend, which was him, thank you very much, was buying condoms. There had to be a logical explanation, and the only one Edward could come up with was that Harry and Demetri were behind the whole thing. That had to be it. Determined to find answers, and momentarily forgetting about Bella and all the drama from the day before, Edward switched direction and went straight to the Swan residence. He was lucky that his targets were out on the front lawn, loading boxes into the back of Demetri's car. "What did you do?" Edward demanded. The pair looked bemused, but Edward didn't buy their act for a moment. "How dare you go around and spread lies that Bella is cheating on me with Jacob?" he snarled. He advanced towards them, his steps heavy with aggression.
"Bella's cheating on you? That's a surprise," Demetri responded.
Edward focused and dove into the vampire's thoughts and stumbled back in shock when he learned that Demetri was honestly surprised by his declaration. You, he struggled. "You mean you didn't spread the rumor that Bella was cheating on me?" Demetri laughed and with a smug grin answered, "No, I did not spread a rumor saying that Bella was cheating on you. But the people in town, this wasn't right. They had to have spread the rumors. It was the only thing that made sense. Bella would never cheat on him. Those women were misled. They really didn't see Jacob and Bella together at the motel. They couldn't have. They really didn't hear about Bella's boyfriend buying condoms, because if that were true, then someone else was calling themselves Bella's boyfriend, and that wasn't possible. Bella loved him. Bella was completely 100% dedicated to him, and him only. Edward stomped his foot like a petulant child. Of course he didn't see it like that, and refused to believe such an outrageous lie. "You had to have done this," he whined. "It doesn't make sense otherwise." Harry, little non-floating Harry, walked forward slowly and used both his small hands to hold one of Edward's. "We really didn't do this, but if you want to know, then maybe you should go talk to Jacob. You can read his mind, and will be able to learn the truth from his thoughts." Edward stared at the pint-sized guy for a moment before pulling his hand away. The petite vampire was right. He could just snatch the truth from Jacob's mind in a moment and have this whole thing settled. Bella would never cheat on him, and he would learn why Jacob's car was at that motel. There was a logical reason, and he would learn it. Running away, Edward didn't bother to look back and see the twin looks of glee on the Volturi members' faces. Harry watched as Edward left and turned to his partner. "We better hurry up and get this thing set up. He will not be happy when he finds us next." Demetri nodded and loaded the last box into the car. "True, but I wonder, how did the rumor twist into Bella cheating on Edward?" Taking a moment, both thought on it, but couldn't come up with a reason. "Well, let's go. We shouldn't leave Felix waiting." Together they got into the car and drive off to their next scheme. Jacob could honestly say that living on the reserve could indeed get worse. Before he hated that, there was barely anything to do here besides head to the beach or play in the forest. They didn't have arcades or movie theaters on Les Push. They didn't have diners or nice clothing stores. They really only had a few tobacco shops, a gas station, and some souvenir shops. Nothing exciting, but now that the whole pack was mad at him, life was worse. He liked changing into a wolf. Sure, he hated it first, thinking he was some sort of freak, but now not only could he accept that he was special, but it also gave him a sense of brotherhood he never had before. Yes, he was close to Embry and Quill, but it wasn't until they were a pack, going on hunts and connecting their thoughts, that the full force of family hit him. But now he couldn't change. One of the pack members was always on guard, patrolling the border, and if he changed, he would hear them. He would hear them berate him, hear them think about how he shamed them, hear them think about how he threw everything away for some stupid girl that he didn't even imprint on. So it was with great enthusiasm that when his father asked him early in the morning to run some errands for him, Jacob agreed and set off immediately. Errands meant he would drive into Forks and get away from the overly oppressive air that clung to his house. Things were going great, and he was about to return home when his car broke down. He was driving a bit distracted when he hit a pothole he would normally avoid, hearing some bad noises happening below. Jacob was fortunate enough to be able to steer his car into the motel parking lot. Jim, the motel manager, came out as soon as Jacob took the key from the ignition. "What's going on here?" the man asked curiously. "I heard a crack." Jacob didn't have a problem with the man. He was a nice guy and all, but they never really talked before. "Not sure. I hit the pothole," Jacob explained as he climbed out of his car. Getting down, Jacob peered under his car only to curse. His luck was shit. "Think I cracked the axle." "Well, isn't that a damn shame?" Jim mumbled. I'm gonna need to get my dad's truck to tow it back home. Do you mind if I leave her here until then? Jacob asked. Jim gave him a smile and shook his head. Yeah, it's no problem. Not like I'm busy and need the parking spot. Just take your time, young man. Jacob smiled at the man. Thanks. I'll be back in an hour or so. Reaching inside the car, Jacob pulled out his dad's medication and pocketed it. It would be bad if someone decided to rob him and they took off with it. There wasn't anything else of worth in the car, so he just waved to Jim and took off. At least the walk home would delay his return even more, and he had an excuse so his dad couldn't be too upset with him. Edward ran to the motel, intent of grabbing Jacob by the throat and ripping answers from his mind. How dare that stupid feral beast lay his filthy, rotten paws on Bella? Edward's mind was a mess of volatile rage and revenge plots. When he reached the motel, the parking lot was empty except for his car. A small glimmer of hope that Jacob never was here entered his mind. Maybe the women in town were delusional. Maybe they were seeing things. And his Bella, his dear, sweet, lovely Bella, never cheated on him with a filthy mutt. Seeing the motel manager, Edward approached him. He would ask this man first. Excuse me, sir, he started. How can I help you? The manager asked. I was wondering if Jacob Black was here. Edward got straight to the point. He could hear the man's thought on Jacob burst from his head. Jacob, what a nice boy. Poor lad, at least he left with a smile on his face. Hopefully he'll be back soon. He was, but he left about 20 minutes ago, the manager said. Don't know how he's going to explain the situation to his dad, though. Billy should have taught him better than that. I see. Edward grounded out. Thank you, sir. Edward pulled out his cell and dialed Bella. Edward, she sounded happy. I'm outside right now, he stated emotionlessly. I'll be right out. The call ended, leaving Edward seething. When Bella did appear, her hair was wet from a shower. The scent of generic shampoo and conditioner hit his nose, and he scrunched it up in distaste. She showered to cover the dog's scent. He couldn't smell any traces of Jacob on her clothes, but then again, they didn't need clothes for what they did together. Bella was smart. She would know exactly what to do to avoid getting caught. Car. Now. He snapped out. Bella looked visibly shocked and hurt, but she complied and got in on the passenger side after returning her room key. Edward snarled and got in his car, ready to take her home and tell his family exactly what he learned. He spent hours fighting with his family to keep her, and the whole time she was shacking up with Jacob Black. Edward started the car, switched to reverse, and was about to leave when a stray thought from the manager came to him. What a rude boy. But what can you expect from a teenager who is cheating on his girlfriend with another man? I wonder what Jacob sees in him. No, he couldn't have been so horribly wrong. He needed to test this. Pulling out of the parking lot recklessly, Edward narrowly avoided a car carrying two men about to pull up to the motel. He barely cast them a glance as he shifted gears and sped towards town. Driving to the grocer's, Edward handed Bella some money. Bella, go inside and buy something to eat. We don't have any food at home, he explained. He watched as Bella walked into the store and focused on the people hanging around outside. Poor dear. She probably knows her boyfriend is unfaithful, and that's why she looks so miserable all the time. I thought she hit the jackpot getting the Cullen boy. Apparently not. I wonder if she ever watches them. That would be hot. Edward was disgusted with their thoughts. While he thought it was Bella cheating, the whole town thought it was him. Thinking back on everything he heard, it made sense that they would be talking about him. After all, why would they think Bella was cheating when it was his car parked beside Jacob's? Then his encounter earlier came back to him. I did not spread a rumor saying that Bella was cheating on you. Of course! Those Volturi bastards were behind this. It was one thing to imply to everyone that he was an abusive partner, but to go as far and concoct a story where he would ever willingly touch Jacob Black was absurd. He was physically repulsed, but the mere sight of the boy, how could he ever touch him sexually? He couldn't even smell the boy without going into fights of violence, wanting to kill him. The whole thing would have been laughable if he wasn't so pissed off at the Volturi. He was semi-right from the start, but they used his own words and fears against him to wiggle out of trouble and distract him, thus making his lose faith in Bella and act recklessly. No, he would go back there and demand retribution. He would make sure those two left his town for good. Felix sauntered into the mall and looked around for his prey. Walking towards the more girlish shops, he spotted a group of 4 teenage girls giggling over a store mannequin. He recognized one from Forks and smirked. Target acquired. "Hello, ladies," he said charmingly as he approached them. "What are you four up to on this fine day?" The girls turned to him and giggled and blushed, as the first spotted him, bashful schoolgirls. "What a delight. If you're not busy, would you mind spending some time with me?" The four giggled some more and nodded, all obviously too shy to speak. "Perfect." Felix grinned. The house was empty. Edward knew that Charlie was working, but Harry and Demetri were also gone. He pulled into the driveway, forcing himself to hold back from slamming the steering wheel in frustration. Bella was silent beside him, sending him confused puppy dog looks. That calmed him down a little. Looking around, hoping to see a clue as to where those filthy, undead bodies of bad luck disappeared to, Edward caught sight of a piece of paper sticking out of the mailbox. Looking closer, he used to advanced vampire sight to see his name written neatly on the outside. Growling he knew this had to be a trick or something, Edward stalked up the porch steps and ripped the offensive paper from the innocent mailbox. Opening it roughly, Edward growled again as he ripped it in half. He didn't care about, though, because he barely restrained a bellow of frustration at what he saw. On the paper was a crudely drawn map with directions to the next town over. There was a giant arrow pointing at a building with the message, "We are here," and beside that was a smiley face drawn to mock him. He contemplated going straight there, just running to see what they had waiting this time, but he couldn't just leave his dear heart Bella in the driveway. No, instead he would complete his original mission to retrieve her, drop her off at his house, and then go deal with these pests of the Volturi. Climbing into the car, he calmed himself down so he wouldn't frighten his sweet pale Forks angel. "What's on the paper?" Bella asked. "A trap," he responded. "Trap?" "Yes, they are up to something again." He peeled out of the driveway, barely missing the neighbor's mailbox, and took his bright-eyed, beautiful maid home. He stopped briefly to explain to his family what was going on, and Emmett declared he had to tag along. Edward didn't want him to, though. He was still upset with the big vampire for turning his back on the whole Bella situation. His protest didn't matter in the end, since Emmett just followed him through the woods. Edward was fast, but Emmett was a hunter, and didn't need to be right on his tail to know where to follow. It was annoying. They got the building and spotted the parking lot full of cars. The voices inside were buzzing, but neither of them could make out what was being said since there were so many people inside. "Should we go in?" Emmett asked. Edward grumbled. "Of course we can't wait for them to come out here." Together they entered through the front and were greeted by Felix at a registration desk. He had a cash box, some bid cards, and a laptop to input information. Seeing them enter, the Volturi guard smiled wide. "Welcome. Would you like to register for the auction?" he asked. "What auction?" Edward growled. Emmett didn't seem to share his attitude as the big lumbering idiot eagerly walked forward to register. "Sure," he cried as he pulled out his wallet. "What do you need? Do you accept credit cards?" "I just need some photo ID. And we do accept credit." Felix acted all professionally as he filled out Emmett's information in a blink of an eye. "Here's your number. If you see something you like, just hold it up to bid. All bids are final, and you need to pay before you can remove any one items from the property." Emmett grinned and bounced slightly in excitement. But Edward wasn't buying this act. He knew there was more going on. "You arrived just in time, actually. The auction is about to start." "Sweet!" Emmett cheered, and then proceeded to drag Edward towards the showroom. The nerve of the idiot! They entered the room to find it packed full of girls, women, and some men. They were all buzzing in excitement and anxiously staring at the stage where a podium stood with a gavel waiting on top. They were whispering to their neighbors, and a group of teenage girls were giggling uncontrollably near them. Edward looked at them for a fraction longer than he normally would and discovered that they attended his school. Actually, looking around, he found that there was a fair amount of Forks High School students there and some of the town's residents, too. Before he could identify more, the side door opened and out walked Harry and Demetri. Harry was dressed in a nice suit and walked up the stage and climbed up on a box to look over the podium. He smiled sweetly to the crowd, prompting a few coos from the women before he started. "Welcome everyone to today's auction. A reminder that all sales are final. You need to pay before you leave. And please no fighting." Edward saw Demetri duck back to the side entrance before wheeling something out that was covered in a black cloth. He pulled the cloth off, and Edward couldn't stop the low growl that escaped. Underneath the cloth were mannequins wearing the Cullens' clothes. He could see his own favorite gray cardigan with a pair of black trousers. He spotted one of Rosalie's dress and matching heels. There was a doctor's coat with Carlisle's name sewn on the breast. a skirt and blouse from Alice, and a t-shirt and pair of boxers that looked like Emmett's. Emmett the moron actually smiled at the sight. "Hey, those mannequins are looking good," he whispered. "They stole our clothes," Edward hissed. "First item on the block will be Emmett Cullen's shirt," Harry started. "He wore this shirt last week to school, and even has a smudge of paint on the back from when a student spilled her painting supplies in the hallway when he walked by." Demetri pushed the Emmett mannequin forward and gestured to the clothing piece to highlight which top they would be selling, like the audience couldn't figure it out. "Bidding will start at $10, Harry announced. "10, an eager fan yelled out as she flailed her bid card in the air. 15, another yelled, and soon the room was filled with several screams from wager teen girls bidding on Emmett's shirt. $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, and $70 were quickly thrown out. Harry managed to keep track and was pointing to each bidder until one girl screeched louder than the rest, $100. The other bidders went silent and collectively glared at the girl. 100. Going twice and sold. Harry banged the gavel. "Winning number is 50. Demetri quickly wrote the winning bid and number on a sticker and stuck it on the shirt. That was an exciting first item, but please remember that we do have many more pieces to sell today. Next, we will be auctioning off Edward Cullen's cardigan. This piece of clothing is one of his favorites, and he can often been seen wearing it in the cooler months. We'll start the bidding at $10. Emmett snickered when there wasn't a flurry of bidding like the one that happened for his shirt. $10, I'm looking for $10. Harry announced. A single bid card went up, and Harry smiled. 10, I'm looking for 15, $15. Another card went up, and the bidding went slow before his cardigan was finally sold for $45. The whole process inspired Emmett to laugh quietly. "My fans love me more," he whispered. Edward had enough and stalked out of the hall to confront Felix. "What is the meaning of this?" he hissed. Felix sat back in his chair and smiled. "It's an auction, of course. I can see that, but why are you selling our stuff?" Edward took a threatening step towards Felix, hoping to intimidate the other vampire. "Simple supply and demand," Felix explained. "Supply and demand? These people demanded our stuff?" Edward was completely flabbergasted with the whole thing. Felix nodded. "Of course, what else would Culleners want?" "Culleners? What the fuck was that?" "No, Culleners sound wrong. Cullenites? Yes, I think they call themselves Cullenites." "I don't care what they are called. Who are they?" Edward demanded. "You don't need to be so rude." Felix lightly reprimanded him, but Edward didn't care. "Cullenites, or whatever, are a group of people who worship you. Cullens, they even have Cullen Church every Sunday. They pray to an altar of Carlisle's loins and Rosalie's hair. They made up their own prayers, which is basically just the Lord's Prayer, but with injections of how fabulous Jasper's hair looks and how strong Emmett is. At one point, they even believed in one great divine lord called the Cullen Lord, but I think even they knew that was going too far." "That doesn't make any sense," Edward shot back. Surely Felix was just playing with him again. "It really doesn't. I mean, anyone who has heard your story once would know that you all claim to be adopted, so there's no reason to worship Carlisle's loins. They don't even work anymore." "No, not that. Why is there a religion dedicated to us?" Edward demanded. "I couldn't say. Maybe they just like your pretty smile. Maybe not your smile. You don't smile a lot. You are very broody. Maybe you should wear more yellow. But you know, having your own religion really helped with this auction. I just had to approach a few young girls, talk about the auction, ask them not to tell anybody else. And so naturally, they told everyone they knew, which got back to the Cullen hearts. They spread it, and I think we're going to have a very profitable day." Felix trailed off. The fact that Felix refused to act serious about the situation angered Edward more. Here he just found out that the Volturi stole his family's possessions, were selling them, and that there was apparently a cult following his family. This was a very serious in his book, and the bastard in front of him just played it off as nothing and made jokes about him wearing yellow. "Is this fun for you? Destroying lives? Driving people to the brink of insanity so that they want to kill you?" Edward asked. "Yes," Felix answered simply. "It really is." "Oh, fuck. Tusk. Felix cut him off. What WWE? What the hell does that mean?" Edward demanded. What would Edward Cullen do? It used to be a very popular saying with the Cullenists until all those nasty rumors about you abusing your girlfriend started. Poor thing. You looked like such a nice boy until some rude person started spreading those. Edward was dumbfounded. You started those rumors. You and Demetri and Harry, you spread those lies. Edward accused. "We did not," Felix protested. "You did," Edward responded. No, I don't think we did," Felix countered. "Yes, you did. You lot showed up and ruined my life. People think I abused Bella. People think I'm sleeping with Jacob. People are thinking the worst about me, all thanks to you and that demonic duo in there," Edward stated as he gestured wildly towards the hall doors. "I think I know what's bothering you," Felix started. Edward let out a groan of frustration. Felix simply refused to actually admit to anything, and he knew what he was going to say next. Would only piss him off more. "I think you're just upset that your fan club isn't as large as Emmett's. It used to be bigger, though, than something about you being gay, and 110% unavailable. And wow, those girls just flocked to Jasper and Emmett. I'm not jealous of Emmett," Edward cried. "I never said you were jealous, just upset. But I can understand why you would be," Felix tried for a comforting tone, but all it really did was make Edward want to strangle the other vampire. "I've had enough of this," Edward declared. Turning around, he stalked back inside to reclaim all his family stuff, only to be met with the sight of Emmett posing for pictures and with a now autographed Emmett shirt that just sold. "You take care of that, all right?" Emmett told the girl who looked about ready to faint. "It's one of my favorites. I got it up north about 2 years ago. I saw this giant grizzly and I stalked it for a bit and I passed this little town. In the gift shop was this shirt and, well, it seemed like fate, really." Edward looked at the shirt and sighed. The shirt was in fact a shirt Emmett got 2 years ago. It was a light gray with a brown bear on the front with the title, "Everything's Better Grizzly." Rosalie hated it, Emmett loved it, and now it was in the hands of some 15-year-old girl with Emmett's signature. "What are you doing?" Edward asked. Emmett smiled wide and walked over to slap him on the back. "Brother, you won't believe it, but this girl bought my shirt for $50. It's today's record so far. Isn't that great?" No, it's not great. They are selling our stuff," Edward hissed. Emmett laughed. "Well, they are selling my stuff. So far, only your cardigan has gone. Anyways, it's fine. I signed a form saying they could do it." Edward glared at his brother. "You signed a form? When?" Edward demanded. "When we arrived. Felix had me sign it when I was registering. It's a good thing I did, though. Register? I mean, they tried selling one of Rose's favorite pair of shoes. Trust me, she wouldn't have liked it for those to go." "I don't like that any of our stuff is being sold off," Edward protested. "It's fine, Eddie boy. I mean, no harm, no foul, right? Harry is going to attend this super school for special kids in Seattle, so they need to raise money to pay for the tuition. We're doing a good deed here." "You're so stupid sometimes." "Harry doesn't need money, neither does he need to go to some special school. What Harry needs is to be torn limb from limb and set on fire." A loud gasp, off to the side, caught their attention. A group of 3 girls were watching them, and the one in the middle was clutching Edward's beloved cardigan. The girl looked devastated for a moment before her face hardened and she stomped her foot, brandishing the cardigan. The girl glared at Edward. "Oh yeah? Well, you know what, Mr. Edward Cullen, this sweater needs to be torn to pieces and set on fire. How dare you say such a thing about a precious little boy like Harry?" The girl didn't bother waiting for a response. Instead, she stormed off with her 2 friends trailing behind. Emmett whistled. "You screwed up there." "I did not screw up," Edward protested. "She just doesn't understand the situation, and why does her opinion matter? I'm done with this. I just can't handle any more shit today. I'm going home," Edward declared. It was the day from hell, and it wasn't even lunch yet. Edward contemplated the durability of piano wire. Would the wire be able to slice a head clean off, or would it break? If he was going to seriously contemplate setting a trap to end the Volturi's reign of terror, he wanted to be sure that his plan was foolproof. The last thing he needed was a botched homicide attempt to add the list of things to torment Edward with thought. He knew he couldn't take all 3 vampires by himself, and he really didn't expect any help from his family. They all made their opinions clear when they couldn't all just agree to turn Bella. Alice might help, and if her gift worked around the child vampire, it would perfect. But it didn't, and she probably wouldn't want to get on the bad side of her mate and Carlisle. No, we would need to do this alone. Then when the Volturi came knocking over the death of 3 of their guard, Edward and Bella could be far away while his family was left without knowing anything incriminating. And so the Volturi could blame Rouge vampires. Then Edward could say he was taking Bella far away to keep her safe for the rogues. and he had the perfect escape plan. Of course, there was also the possibility that the Volturi would see Edward missing and his family trying to hide him and then punish them for killing the guards, but then they would just get the punishment they deserve for not sticking by him and his mate. They always talked about how one day he would find his mate and how happy they would all be for him. And they were at the start. But now they didn't seem to care for Bella at all. They kicked her out of the family meeting. They couldn't agree to turn her. They basically let the Volturi into their home and allowed them to have free reign. The Volturi wanted Bella dead, and they were welcoming them to Edward. That was a betrayal. So what if turning Bella would break the treaty in Forks? It was one little town. They could move and live anywhere. So what if Rosalie didn't exactly like Bella, but that was the whole childbearing thing? And as evidenced by Harry, children are noisy little brats. Who would want one? It wasn't that he couldn't use his family, it was that he didn't trust his family. They would probably go running straight to the Volturi with news of his pan and ruin everything. He wouldn't tell them. Deciding to plot another day, Edward turned towards his lovely mate. Bella was seated on the chaise lounge in his room, staring out the window to the forest beyond. He watched her as she sighed, and he couldn't help but smile. She sighed so beautifully. It was like she could express so many thoughts and emotions into one sigh. Bella was so passionate about everything she did, he couldn't understand how anyone could hate her. Her face and eyes were so expressive that sometimes he didn't need to hear her talk to understand what she needed or wanted. He couldn't imagine eternity without her. "Should we just run away?" he asked. Bella turned towards him, her eyes wide with shock and hope. "Run away?" "Yes, just leave everyone here and live happily somewhere new," he said. "Can we?" "Of course we can. I can take money out so that we live comfortably. We can travel until we find a vampire with enough control and compassion to turn you safely, and we can be together without people trying to tear us apart. Don't you want that?" Edward walked forward, needing to be closer to his mate, needing to stare directly in her eyes so that he may see the never-ending love they shared staring back at him. "Do we leave now?" Oh, it's sweet Bella, trusting him so explicitly that she doesn't need any more encouraging. She's willing to leave with him without any questions. It's truly satisfying knowing that someone loves you so completely. They are willing to do anything you ask of them. Not now, but soon. I still need to plan our getaway. But first, before we leave, I think we should treat the Volturi as they have treated us. Bella's eyes grew so bright at his words that it was like the sun had descended from the sky and infected her eyes. "What will we do?" "We ruin their reputations as they have ruined ours," Edward said with glee. Bella threw herself at him, her deliciously dry, chapped lips pressed against his, and he could feel her heat rubbing against his chest as she strained to kiss him. He hugged her close and smiled. Love was beautiful. Harry officially announced the sale of the last item and knocked his gavel against his podium. The auction was finished, and there were quite a few very happy people leaving. They hadn't sold everything they stole. Some of Edward's clothes had been left, not many wanting them after patrons spread news of what they heard Edward saying. Other items had been reclaimed by Emmett, but those mostly belonged to Rosalie, and with each item he took back, the other Rosalie items went up in price. Physically seeing clothing of hers leaving the sale block had inspired her fans to bid higher on the remaining items, so that they may own at least one item of hers. Esma's items didn't sell too high or at all, but she didn't have as many fans. Rosalie and Carlisle were the biggest sellers, and Harry was certain that the only reason Carlisle beat Emmett was because his fans were older women with jobs and could afford to spend more on his ties than Emmett's younger fans could spend on the Big Bear's shirts. With the end of the sale, Demetri went to help sort and package purchases. Felix was manning the cash, and Harry went to the door to hand everyone a box of cookies and thank them for their support. The lovely ladies at the Women's Association had baked them some delicious-looking treats in order to help the poor dear Harry go off to his big special school in Seattle. The entire day was a success. But something was telling him that some trouble was brewing elsewhere. And Harry didn't like that. Walking to Demetri, Harry silently asked his partner what to do. Demetri ruffled his hair and smiled. "Don't worry, Felix and I have a plan." Charlie sighed heavily as he entered his home. He loved his house. He bought it as soon as he could after saving half his paycheck from the police station. He was just a young man then, working hard and hoping to one day find a nice woman, have some kids, and grow old together in a house that he purchased all on his own. He wanted a large family and to raise all his children in his hometown. He wanted to be happy and give them everything he had and everything he didn't. Then he met his wife. It was a whirlwind affair. He truly loved Renee. They met by chance at La Push. when Renee and her friends were traveling through. She was like a bright spark against the dull beach sand and water. When she returned to seize again, Charlie knew that his heart belonged to her. The whole thing had been quick and passionate, and soon they were leaving the Port Angeles courthouse, smiling happily with their newly certified marriage certificate between them. This house was supposed to be a symbol of how strong their love was. But then his parents were dying, Renee got pregnant, and while Charlie wanted to spend as much time as he could with his new wife and soon-to-be child, he needed to take care of his parents. He thought Renee understood that she was okay with seeing less of him as he went through the turmoil, his parents' failing health, but she didn't. Then one day, she left him, taking their newborn daughter with her. He told himself that once he knew his parents would be okay on their own, he would chase after her. He would go and sweep her off her feet again and remind her why she loved him. He would convince her to come back home with him, and they would be happy again. But his parents died. When he called to tell her, she didn't even offer her condolences, didn't ask him how he was. She didn't even offer to come back with Bella so that he may have some comfort. All she wanted was to work out the child support payments. That's when Charlie gave up on her. He didn't fight, he just told her how much he would pay her to take care of Bella, but he at least wanted to see his daughter once a year. Renee agreed, and they mailed the divorce papers back and forth within the week. He kept the house, though. He worked hard to save the money. He fixed it up best he could in their first few months of marriage. And part of him had hope that maybe one day he would meet someone new and they could finally make this the home he once dreamed of. Only that never happened. But now he had family to come home to, and that was a great feeling. Even if it wasn't his own daughter, he came home to every day. Walking into the living room, Charlie smiled at the young men sitting on his couch, watching sports, with the little one curled up between them, snoozing away. He went to his chair and sat down, grabbing the bowl of chips that was waiting on the side table. "Who's winning?" he asked. "No one yet. They've been pretty evenly matched all game." "We just started the second half," Felix answered. "Good. I didn't miss anything then," Charlie responded. Life was getting good. He turned to watch the match, not noticing the glowing yellow eyes watching the house from the trees on the opposite side of the street. He didn't notice, but the 3 Volturi members did. The first part of Edward's plan was simple. Everyone in town knew that Harry and Demetri were staying with Charlie because their mother had died, and the police chief was helping the pair find their feet. It was a sad story that compelled everyone to feel sorry for the brothers and watch out for them. After all, losing a parent and orphaned wasn't easy, was it? No one liked to ask how their mother died. They didn't want it seen as insensitive or nosy, but they were all curious. That made it easy for Edward to start his plan.
Bella?
While not as popular as she once was, still had a few friends or people who liked to pretend to be her friends. Edward knew this, so with a little coaching, Bella was prepared to finally spread the news of how the brothers' mother died. She was a druggie, sold her body and everything to get a quick fix, but not just her own. Demetri would sleep around too. He wanted her high so that he could do whatever he wanted without her caring. I think he also dealt drugs. He has that shady dealer look about him, Bella quietly told her friends at lunch one day. The girls gasped in horror at the thought. If that were true, why would your father take them in then? Jessica asked, the only one at the table not infatuated with his mate. He only wanted Harry, thinking he could save the little boy, but Demetri wouldn't let him. He forced his way into the house and refuses to leave. Bella tried. Wasn't Demetri just holding a fundraiser to raise money to send Harry to some special school in Seattle? Jessica pressed. Bella glared at her. He is using the money for drugs. Jessica rolled her eyes and stood up. Right, Swan, I know you don't like them, but this is going too far. Not even I would make up something like this. Edward watched her walk out of the cafeteria and followed. He needed his plan to work and for the school's biggest gossip queen to believe them. Jessica had the special ability to spread gossip fast to students and adults alike. If she were on board, then there was no way that these rumors would get covered up. Jessica, Edward whispered as he approached her from behind. They were in an empty hallway, no one to see their meeting, which suited Edward just fine. Edward? Jessica stuttered and blushed as she turned around. It was nice knowing that he still had an effect on the girl. He was counting on it. You don't seem to believe Bella's story. Why not? He asked. He stepped closer to her, invading her personal space. The girl blushed even harder at the action, but she didn't back away. Her thoughts told him she was enjoying having him so close. It's just that the story is so unbelievable. Demetri looks like a gentleman. He wouldn't be a prostitute or a drug dealer, she explained. But don't they say, don't judge a book by its cover? Jessica nodded. So he may look like that, but he could be hiding such a dark secret, Edward whispered as he bent down a little. His words brushed against her ear, and he could smell the arousal coming off the human girl. I guess. Jessica, I need you to do me a favor. Can you do me a favor? The girl's heartbeat picked up and she was squirming against him. He could tell she wanted to press into him, kiss him, and steal what was rightfully Bella's. He was disgusted with her, but he wouldn't let it show. Instead, he moved forward, trapping her between his chest and a set of lockers. Can you help me, Jessica? He asked again. What do you need help with? She asked, her voice breathy. I need you to tell everyone you believe Bella's story. I need you to spread it around so everyone hears it, he whispered slowly. If you do that, I will give you a gift. Jessica's eyes went wide, a hopeful look entering them. Reading her thoughts, he could hear several things she hoped he would give her. Money, expensive gifts, a pony. But the one thought, stronger than the others, was hope for sex. She wanted Edward to take her virginity. Edward was surprised. She hadn't already given it up, but he couldn't judge. He was still a virgin, and he had been around for 118 years. He brushed his lips softly against her cheek. Just a sample? Jessica's thoughts stuttered to a halt. Her mind was a mess of happiness and disbelief that Edward was willing to cheat on Bella with her. A small part of her was vindictively proud that she managed to steal Edward away from Bella, a victory she would covet the rest of her pathetic life, no doubt. I'll do it. Thank you, Edward smirked and pulled away. Lunch would be done soon, and he had no desire for others to see him in such an intimate situation with Jessica. You better get to work, Jessica. He hoped this worked, but then again, this was only the backup plan. The night before, Felix and Demetri ran through the forest in search of their prey. Neither liked the fact that a werewolf was so close. Felix had dragged Demetri from the house as soon as Charlie went to bed. They left Harry back at the house to watch Charlie and see if the beast returned. They figured they would catch him before he tried to backtrack to the Swan residence. They didn't know what a werewolf was doing watching them. They knew that the shapeshifters nearby wouldn't come so close. They were still having an internal battle and kept to their borders while they sorted it out. Felix hoped that it was only a newly shifted shapeshifter, the internal battle distracting the pack from the new addition to their ranks and letting him slip through. But Demetri told him that the beast's mind wasn't the same. It worried them. Arriving in a clearing, the two Volturi guards readied themselves for attack. They could see the beast they followed standing in the middle, clearly waiting for them with a smug look on his face. He was a large man with a vicious feral look around him. Only two? I was hoping to lure all three of you, he said. His voice had a husky growl to it. And why would you want the three of us? One is more than enough to kill you, Felix responded with a snarl. See, someone went and advertised here you guys were, even put a bounty on your heads. Well, me and the boys couldn't say no, could we? The werewolf said. Bounty? Boys? The two guards spoke over one another. The werewolf threw back his head and laughed. Yes, boys. Suddenly on the edge of their senses, Demetri and Felix could feel 10 other werewolves rapidly approaching them. Snarling, the two guards turned so they were back to back, wishing Harry was there to at least stand guard and provide air support. An ambush. Cute. Felix growled. But we can still kill you all. The head wolf looked very smug with himself. Maybe you can kill us, but we weren't the only ones that heard where you are. I hear some powerful people in England would just love to get their hands on that little one you have. Demetri snarled loudly at the statement. Let's kill them quickly. Felix laughed, and as the first werewolf tried jumping them, the lashed out and dug his claws into the beast's neck, tearing through the animal's windpipe. Harry was worried. He hadn't heard from Felix and Demetri since they left, and as the sun broke over the horizon, he feared something terrible may have happened. Charlie was at work. He left early, which meant he didn't check on the boys, so that he wouldn't disturb their sleep. Harry appreciated that he wouldn't need to lie to the man and tell him Demetri and Felix went somewhere, leaving him alone. The human man probably would have worried and stayed home, which would have prevented Harry from leaving to investigate. His first and only lead was Edward. He knew the mind reader wouldn't just lie down and take it, and at some point he would try to lash out and fight them. Well, fight them harder than he was already. He would check in with the mind reader and his family first before he called Volterra. He entered the school grounds and walked towards the office. It was between periods after lunch, so most students were walking to the next class or hanging around. He got some curious looks, some adoring looks from the female population, but oddly enough, he got some weird looks. Something was going on around here. He could feel it.
Entering the office, he looked up at receptionist and gave her his best angelic look.
"Oh, you're back again, sweetie. How can I help you today?" she asked. "I'm sorry to bother you, but..." Harry bit his lip and looked down, looking shy. "Well, my cousin, Miss Swan." "Yeah, Bella. Well, she ran away from home and said she was moving in with her boyfriend." Mrs. Cope gasped and leaned forward in her chair. "Did she now?" "Yes, but I'm worried about her. I know that the Cullens have lots of money and can buy her stuff, but I thought she might like some of her own things." Harry trailed off and then took off the backpack he was carrying. "I brought her bag and packed her some things. I grabbed what I thought was important." Mrs. Cope looked misty-eyed as she regarded him. "That was very kind of you." Harry looked away again, acting even shayer than before. Mrs. Cope was lapping it up. "Do you think I could deliver it to her? Or maybe you could call her to the office so I can hand it to her?" The old woman sniffled before nodding. "Of course, dear. I'll just give an announcement asking her to come to the office." "No worries." Harry smiled at her and went to sit in one of the hard plastic chairs. Step one of his plan was done. Sure enough, Mrs. Cope made a school-wide announcement asking Bella Swan to come to the office. Harry guessed it would take a few minutes to get to the office, so fiddling with one of the zippers, Harry stood a minute later and approached the desk. "Mrs. Cope," Harry danced from one foot to the other. "Could I use the washroom?" "Of course, dear. It's just down the hall and on the left. I'll watch that backpack for you while you go," she offered. Harry smiled at her and threw the bag on the desk before running out the door. He peeked around the corner to watch the next event unfold. Mrs. Cope readjusted the bag, jostling it just enough for the open pocket to drop something on the desk. The woman reached to retrieve it, and when she brought it back, she gasped again to find herself holding a positive pregnancy test. Looking from the test to the bag, the woman quickly shoved the test into the pocket of her cardigan and stood up. "Cheryl will love hearing about this," she exclaimed before shuffling into the vice principal's office.
Harry grinned. That would give him some time with his lovely cousin. He turned around to see his cousin turning the corner, making him grin wider. Not giving her time to react, Harry ran to her and wrapped his arms around her tightly.
"Hello, cousin," he said quietly. "It's wonderful seeing you again, but enough pleasantries. What did Edward do?" The Cullen household was as silent as ever to normal human ears, but the vampires inside were quite active. Emmett and Rosalie had arrived home from school and was quietly discussing the new rumors floating around. Someone had told the student population that Demetri was a drug lord and sold his little brother out to perverts for some extra cash on the side. They said he got into trouble back in New York and was hiding out in Forks until the heat died down. Another rumors was that Bella was pregnant and was planning to run away with Edward so they could have their bastard child. I'm not saying that it's true, but Bella has been looking a bit plumper than usual. Emmett trailed off. Rosalie scoffed. "And how did she get pregnant? A vampire can't impregnate a human, and even if they could, Edward and Bella haven't had sex yet. If they did, do you think Edward would still look like there's a giant oak tree-sized stick up his ass?" Emmett chuckled. "True. If he ever got laid, I think he would smile for the first time in 100 years. His lips only know how to go straight or down. But if Edward didn't get her pregnant, who did?" Rosalie asked. "I could smell the my kid on her the other day. It was heavy too, like she was rolling around in a bathtub full of him. She showered before Edward got him, though. You don't think—" "They will have one ugly baby if that's true." Jasper let out a small laugh from the other side of the room, and the couple was quick to send him smirks. "Would you care to join the conversation, Jasper?" Rosalie asked. "I wouldn't have much to add, I'm afraid," he replied. "Nonsense. Who do you think started the rumors against Demetri?" Rosalie tried to engage him. Jasper shook his head. "It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Edward and Bella. Bella was at Jessica's table during lunch, spinning quite the tale. I heard some of it, but the drama club was near us, and they were rehearsing. After, Jessica didn't seem to believe whatever Bella was saying, but I saw Edward waiting in the wings. I followed Jessica out and watched Edward convince Jessica to spread the story." "Oh, and how did he convince her?" Rosalie was suddenly interested. "He kissed her." "No," Rosalie gasped. "He actually kissed her?" "He did." Rosalie blinked a few times before turning towards her husband. "This is some modern soap opera, isn't it? I knew Bella was a rotten little snake, but now Edward is showing his true colors too. What do we do?" Emmett frowned. "I don't know. but we need to tell Carlisle. He's still on the fence about changing Bella, and this may finally convince him to deny Edward's request. Rosalie's face practically lit up at his words. Finally, before the three could continue talking, Esme entered the room. Do any of you know when Edward and Bella will be home? I wanted to start on Bella's dinner, but I don't want to cook something that will be done before she's home. Just serve her garbage. I'm sure she won't notice the difference, Rosalie said cattily. Rosalie, Esme trailed off. Rosalie was set to defend her comment when Alice gasped from upstairs and ran down quickly to share her latest vision. They're leaving, she cried. What? Who's leaving? Emmett asked. The Volturi. Alice was jumping happily in place as she shared the news. I just saw them boarding the Volturi private jet 3 days from now. They're finally leaving us. Rosalie snorted. Are you sure they weren't just going abroad to retrieve something? You didn't see the plane actually take off, did you? Alice glared at her. It doesn't matter. They are finally leaving and we can live in peace again. With them gone, Edward and Bella can finally be happy again. Rosalie stood up, her pose aggressive. Look, you have been saying that you can't get a clear vision on them since you were in Italy. Suddenly a crystal clear vision comes through of them boarding a plane and you assume it's them leaving? I don't trust it. Why would they leave? Why now? They said they weren't leaving until Bella was either turned or dead. So does that mean in the next 3 days, Bella will die? Carlisle promised he wouldn't turn her until the whole family was in agreement, and I refuse to accept her. If she's turned, it means I have left this family for good. Or I die. You are treating this like some great celebration, but have you thought for 1 second about the implications of the Volturi leaving? Alice hissed at the blonde. Why does it have to be bad, like you say? Why can't you accept Bella? Accept the Edward is happy. Just accept that this family will finally be complete. Instead of being mad at me, be mad at the right people. Be mad at Demetri, Felix, and Harry for ruining our lives. If they weren't here, we would have none of these problems. Rosalie scoffed. If they weren't here, then we would still be living in a world where the only vampires that Carlisle cares about is Esme and Edward. We were always second best to his first son, his first child. I was a disappointment because I wouldn't mate with him. He didn't want to turn Emmett. He didn't even turn you or Jasper. He just accepted you because I told him to. I was the one who told him that you deserved a spot among our family. Did you vision show you that when you joined? Instead of blaming the Volturi for doing their jobs, maybe step out of your delusions and look at the world around you. Alice looked mutinous. You don't care about this family. You only care about yourself. Maybe you do leave for good in 3 days. Maybe you board that plane with them and then we can finally live without your bitchy attitude. You're only jealous of Bella. If she's changed, then she's guaranteed to have a special power. Then you will be the only one without a gift. Beauty? What a stupid thing to claim. Girls, Esme screamed, hoping to stop them. She was ignored, though. Jealous? As if I would be jealous of such a plain idiot girl like her. I hate her because she has a family that cares about her, and she doesn't care. I hate her because she wants to be a vampire and throw her life away when instead she can live and have children. I hate her because she's a parasite. Alice is getting ready to start spewing more nonsense, but Emmett stepped forward and took his wife into his arms. Rose, calm down, please. Is Bella really worth getting this upset over? Looking back at her husband, Rosalie shook her head and turned away from Alice. Maybe I should leave this family. Clearly I've been unwanted for a while now. Emmett frowned. Hey, why don't we go stay at the cottage for a bit? It will give everyone's temper time to cool down, and we won't have to see Bella. Does that sound good? He asked gently. Fine, I'll go pack. Rosalie didn't look at anyone else as she left the room. Sorry everyone, but I think it's best for Rose and I stayed somewhere else for a few days, Emmett said sadly as he started packing a few things to keep him and Rosalie entertained while they were away. Oh, honey, you two don't need to leave, Esme tried. Emmett gave her a sad smile and shook his head. I think we do. Rose doesn't want to be near Bella, and I won't let her go anywhere alone. I'll go call Carlisle, Esme said slowly. Watching everything unfold, Jasper couldn't help but shake his head in disgust. Esme didn't even try to convince her children to stay, and Alice was so caught up in Bella fever that she just threw her own family out. The whole situation was getting out of control, and Jasper couldn't help but blame Edward and Bella for it. Yes, the Volturi came, but it was their job to see that the law was carried out. This family was falling apart. Harry floated above the Cullen house, taking notes. He got a call from Demetri earlier, telling him everything that happened. He planned to call Volterra and tell them about the hit out for them now, which wasn't good. Harry then proceeded to tell him what he heard at school when he threatened Bella. The girl was vicious in retelling all the lies she spewed, hoping to finally knock them down a peg. It was kind of cute how she thought she was on par with them, but it was also annoying. If they were just attacking Bella, she would have cracked a long time ago, but with Edward supporting her and Alice supporting them both, it was taking longer. The three were annoying little bugs, but the Cullens were breaking apart, and Alice's vision of them leaving in 3 days was interesting. Rosalie and Emmett also gave him a good idea to keep trolling Bella. But if they only had 3 days left, then they needed to think of one last big prank to pull on the sickening couple before they took off for good. Of course, if they were leaving, then they had to make sure Bella wasn't going to be around any longer. Whether they killed the pathetic human girl or changed her and hid her away while she passed through the newborn stage didn't matter. What did was that the vampire law was being upheld. Putting his book away, Harry floated away, ready to plant some evidence around town, and let the whispers fly as they talked about Bella getting pregnant after cheating on Edward with Mike Newton, and maybe more. Mike Newton was an okay kid. He knew he wasn't the smartest or the best looking. It was hard to be proud of your looks when the Cullens attended the same school as you and were the object of all the girls' wet dreams. Honestly, looking in the mirror was difficult after spending the day at school with them. He was working in his parents' shop when the bell over the door rang, causing him to look up and see two very upset parents storming towards him. He didn't get to question him before his father grabbed his arm and dragged him out of the building. His mother was quick to flip the closed sign and lock the door. "What's going on?" Mike asked. "You young man are in big trouble. What have we told you about being responsible?" his mother asked. To be responsible," he answered. "Exactly. And what do? You go get that Swan girl pregnant," she hissed. "What pregnant? I didn't get anyone pregnant." Mike argued. His father shoved him in the back of their van and closed the door. "Mom, Dad, I didn't get Bella pregnant. I haven't even had sex yet. Plus she's dating Edward Cullen," he told them earnestly. "Don't lie to me, young man. She just called the house and left a voicemail telling you that she's pregnant, but not to worry because she plans to terminate it before Edward finds out. We are going to the police station right now and you will apologize to her father and tell him you plan to take care of your child when he or she is born. You will not allow your child to be killed." His mother was very mad. "But I never had sex with her. It couldn't possibly be mine," he yelled, trying to make his parents understand. "She said you would try to deny it," his father piped in. "But I never had sex with her." When the family arrived at the station, they were greeted with several other families, all crowding around Chief Swan's desk. They were yelling at him, and the poor police chief looked overwhelmed. "How can you say that?" One mother yelled. "When I searched Jordan's room, I found some of Bella's homework and dirty panties. Panties. In my son's room. I don't care what your daughter says. That child does not belong to my son. He is a good Christian boy," the local priests yelled. The whole room was chaotic, and Mike's mom looked godsmacked at everything. "Everyone, please," Charlie yelled. "I understand you are all upset, as am I, but I can't answer one or all of you if you keep yelling." The crowd settled down a little after that, but there were still some angry murmurs going around. "Look, I don't know why my daughter called all your homes and told you your sons were going to be a fathers soon, or why she said she would terminate the baby. Honestly, I haven't spoken to my daughter since she decided to move out and live with the Cullens. But I can assure you that there is no way all your sons are the father." Some parents seemed to calm down, but others just got angrier. "So you're saying your daughter has slept around so much that she doesn't know who the father is and is blaming every boy in town?" the priest asked. I don't know. Clearly I haven't been a good father, and that failing is all my own. I tried my best, but it wasn't good enough. I will try to talk to her and see what she has to say," Charlie admitted. Mike looked over and saw his mom's face soften. "Oh, it can't be your fault," she called out. "Bella did live with her mother for a number of years, and everyone in Forks knows how Renee acts. It's only logical that she has taken after her mother." "Mom," Mike hissed, horrified that his mom would say something like that in a room full of people. "Hush, dear. You're still in trouble. I thought I taught you better when growing up. I always said it will be sweeter if you protect your Peter, but you did it, and now we are in this situation. But I didn't sleep with her." Mike denied again. That comment started a great protest from all the other teen males in the room, as they also denied sleeping with the same girl. Mike could feel his eyes filling with tears as his mother loudly declared she was taking her son down to the clinic to get tested, since it couldn't be good if he slept with a girl who clearly had gotten around. Charlie just wished for the floor to open up and swallow him so he wouldn't have to deal with this mess at all. What was Bella thinking? At home, Harry carefully saved the voice file. He complied. He recorded Bella several times while she was around and cut sound clips together until they have a recording of her that they played with every household they called. It was a little sloppy, but none of the parents seemed to have noticed in their indignation. Demetri went out and bought Charlie a case of beer and nice steak in apology, though. They did feel a little bad that the man was the one to deal with the aftermath. There was no peace for Carlisle, as he let out another deep human sigh as the couple across from him stared accusingly at him. The clinic had been overrun with upset parents demanding their sons be tested. All available doctor and nurses were called to service, and as Carlisle sat down with his third couple, he could see a repeat of his first two meetings. The parents were blaming him for their son's predicament. "We want a new doctor," Mrs. Newton said. "We don't like or trust you anymore. I understand that you are going through a difficult situation at the moment, but..." "No, we want a new doctor. I will go see who is available," he told the couple. He wanted to help, he really did, but no one wanted him to treat their son when it was his son's girlfriend that apparently got them all into this mess. It's not like he wanted teenage boys dropping their pants so he could stare at their privates, but he wanted to be trusted and treated like a doctor, and that no longer seemed possible. He couldn't help people when everyone was requesting other doctors to look after them. Maybe it was time to pack his family up and move on. Standing, he exited the door to see Nurse Jane standing nearby. "Another one then, doctor?" she asked. "Yes, this couple would prefer a new doctor as well," he answered. "Dr. Chang is almost finished with the family he is with now. I'll send him this way," she assured the doctor. "Maybe I should just go home. I don't seem to be of any help at the moment." Jane looked sad for him. It was a bit embarrassing that the nurses had to keep covering for him because he couldn't do his job properly. "Nurse, please apologize to the other doctors for me. I will be going now." "Of course, Dr. Cullen. I think they will understand, considering the situation," she responded. He handed the chart off to Jane and gave her a nod in thanks. When Carlisle got home, he called for everyone to gather in the dining room to talk. Esme flitters around looking upset over something. Alice had a grin on her face. Jasper looked to be thinking deeply over something, and Edward was busy with Bella. "Where are Rosalie and Emmett?" he asked. Esme started to wring her hands, but she answered right away. "They left to spend a few days at the cottage. Rosalie got into a fight with Alice and Emmett thought they needed some time away," she explained. "What was this fight about?" Carlisle asked. "Alice had a vision of the Volturi leaving in 3 days. Rosalie voiced her concerns, and Alice told her she should leave the family." Jasper spoke up before anyone else could. "They are still torn over changing Bella." Carlisle sat down as he absorbed the explanation. "Right, we'll talk about that later. Right now we have two important things to discuss. First being the Volturi leaving, and the second, why did I hear that you, Bella, are pregnant?" "Pregnant?" Edward yelped. "Bella's not pregnant. From what I overheard in the waiting room, every parent with a teenage boy in Forks believes Bella is going to make them grandparents," Carlisle told them. Edward was on his feet in a second, growling at the news. "Those dirty lying little bastards. How dare they claim such things about my Bella?" A twinkling giggle filled the room. The family turned as one as Harry floated down outside their window. Edward dug his nails into the wood of the table as he spotted the little guard. None of them had even known they were being spied on. They couldn't see, hear, or smell the little vampire. "They didn't say they slept with Bella. Bella did," the little guy said. He pulled out a recorder and pressed play, allowing the whole family to listen as Bella's. "Look, this is Bella Swan. We need to talk." "No, we don't need to talk. I'm pregnant and you're the father. I'm not keeping it. I don't want to carry your child. What we did was fun, but it was only for fun. I'll tell you how much you owe me for the abortion later." Click. Edward flung himself at the window. He was almost completely feral after hearing the recording. Carlisle grabbed his son before he could break the glass, while Jasper was on his feet, ready to help restrain Edward if needed. "Let me go." Edward yelled. "They destroyed Bella's reputation." The giggling stopped as Harry looked Edward dead in the eye. "You set werewolves onto my kin," he hissed. "What?" Jasper asked. "Did the Qualu tribe attack?" "No, but Edward did send up a flare telling every creature who hates the Volturi where we are. They came into Forks to attack us. Demetri and Felix had to chase them away. Edward, you didn't. Asme whispered. What's wrong with that? We wanted them gone and now they have to leave. So what if they die in the process? They deserve it. Edward hissed. You also doomed us. What do you think those monsters are going to do when they kill the Volturi? Do you think they are just going to pack up and leave? They will see us, see that we're vampires, and try to kill us. Why wouldn't they? You put us in danger too, Jasper yelled. It was rare for the family to ever see him get upset, to the point he raised his voice. Why would they? We're not part of the Volturi, Edward yelled back. We're vampires. Do you think there's some giant billboard out there with all the Volturi members' faces on it, telling the world who is in the guard and who isn't? They don't know that we're not part of the Volturi. They will see that we're vampires and attack us. You should hit him. It'll make for a great shot, Harry called out. Looking over, Carlisle felt like pulling out his hair at the sight of the vampire floating outside the window, filming the whole fight. Bella, could you try to give the camera a little love, a little expression? You make for a very boring shot like that. It felt like his arms were going to be ripped out when Edward tried to lunge for the child again, but Carlisle kept a firm grip on his son. Harry, why are you here? Harry pouted. I needed somewhere safe to stay. Demetri and Felix caught another enemy scent. They left to take care of it, so while they are dealing with this new threat brought on because of your son, I was set the task to watch you lot. Oh, and Esme, your nose is a little shiny. You might want to touch up. Or you stop filming, Edward yelled. Passion. Love the passion. Edward, maybe you could share some with your supposed mate. Harry encouraged. Bella has expressions. Well, that's a wrap. It's gonna need some editing, a little movie magic, and a title song by some mediocre alternative rock pop band, and it's good to go, Harry announced. Might win some crappy teen awards. Edward has the whole angst thing down that drives tweens crazy. And Jasper's a good-looking bloke, lots of fans to reel in. Despite what he said, Carlisle was sure that the boy was still filming them. I never understand what goes through your head, Edward screamed. Demetri, Felix, Alex, right now I have an Oscar on my mind. That's it. We're leaving, Carlisle announced. He had enough of this. He left the Volturi because he didn't like feeding from humans and how they treated the human people they did interact with. This right here, they were doing exactly the type of thing that turned Carlisle away. They thought they were entitled to everything and that what they say goes. The Volturi could make your life hell or wipe you out. It was just the way they were. Currently, they settled on ruining the life Carlisle and his family built, that soon the entertainment they derived from this would wane and then it would be time for Plan B. It was better to do what they said now than fight them later. This family is falling apart. Rosalie and Emmett are already gone. I can no longer do my job at the hospital, and every day I come home there is another issue to deal with. We're done, Harry. The Volturi won. Edward, you're gonna change Bella, and we're gonna lay low in Alaska. Yes, Alice cheered. The girl was so happy and was bouncing around the room. Are you sure, Carlisle? Rosalie and Emmett haven't agreed to this, and I'm not on board with Bella becoming one of us either. Jasper spoke up. You promised us that you wouldn't allow Bella to change until everyone in the family agreed. Jasper, I think this is one time that we can do something. No! Jasper stopped him. You promised us. You promised your family, including a child that you turned personally, and you're going to break that promise for one human? Jasper. Carlisle started. We are in a desperate situation here. Kill her. Kill Bella Swan and be done with it, Jasper said. I'm going to go stay with Rosalie and Emmett. Carlisle couldn't respond since after announcing that he left the room. Didn't Jasper understand that he couldn't kill Bella? A human. He spent so long working hard to save human lives and to protect them from other vampires, and now one of his children expected him to take a life. What the hell happened to his family? It seemed he was asking himself that a lot. Ari chuckled as he watched the live feed. Harry was sending him. It seemed his little minions were doing a better job than he expected. He didn't think they would actually manage to tear the family apart. The Cullens always seemed to be such a strong unit, but it wasn't true. They were falling away like pieces and all over one little pathetic human girl. Harry, darling, close up on Miss Swan's face, please, he asked. The camera zoomed in and the screen was filled with Bella's profile. The girl really didn't understand what she started when she decided to interact with the Cullen clan. Will they be home soon? Alex asked. Yes, the Wizards almost got him in Seattle. This announcement of Edwards is sure to reach them soon. I want you and Jane on that plane to bring them back. Yeah, Sarah, Jane responded. We should prepare room for 3 new recruits, Aro decided as he contemplated the situation. And that car we ordered, let's put it somewhere that it's sure to be seen. Also, who do we have in England? I want an update. Yes, Aro, Alex said before he turned to leave. And Harry dear, your school acceptance will be in the mall tomorrow. Be sure that Charlie sees it. We all want a nice clean break,